Good evening and welcome to the Gin and Tonic show on this Friday, the 26th of January. Welcoming our viewers who are here and not here yet. Welcoming my, as always, trusty co-panelists, Stop Spamming. And we have a special guest today. Now, somebody's popping in and he's going to just be here with us for a short few moments, and then we're going to go on to our other guests. So I'm going to present to you Zakir-Naik.
Assalamu alaikum. I'm Zakir-Naik, Dr. Zakir-Naik, speaking from an unknown location. You know, I've been exiled from my country in India. So currently, I can't tell you where I'm speaking from, but I am happy to be in the show.
Dr. Naik, you've been a proponent of Islam for, I guess, all your life. But it seems to me when I watch some of your videos as an atheist, you just really don't have a clue about science. Maybe you can share.
Please. You invite me on your show, and then you instantly insult me.
No, it's not any insult.
Excuse me, brother. You asked the question. I'm here to answer. So if you please stop interrupting me, I can answer the question. This is the sign of arrogance. But I will give you the proof. I will give you the verse number, chapter 5, verse 2. And you do, all you say is, I don't like it. I don't understand. Brother, Islam is the truth. You will have to do your research. There's scientific miracles in the Qur'an. And you coming to me and saying, I don't understand.
No, I'm not saying I don't understand. I'm saying that when I listen to you, the scientific miracles you claim in the Quran, when I look at science, it seems to me that you don't really have a very good understanding of science. So you sort of stretch the Quran to not science.
But I'm a medical doctor, MBBS, qualified, heart surgeon. So I have read so many scientific journals and not one has contradicted the Quran. Can you please tell me of a scientific miracle that is not true in the Quran?
Choose anyone. Hey, how about the expanding universe?
Embryology.
Oh, embryology! I could bring in my co-panelist. He's done more on embryology than I have. Stops. Do you want to school Zakir-Naik on embryology?
You want to school me?
I'm doing embryology at the moment on a different channel. So this is quite interesting. If you look at embryology, do you know what embryology is as a medical doctor?
Embryology is the baby in the womb of the mother.
And how many layers of darkness do you need?
Sorry?
Oh, where do you know that?
Where do I know what? Sorry.
How many layers do you know that? Where do you get this information about the three layers?
You get it from the Quran.
And what is the safest place in the
world? Brilliant. A warm welcome to Veedu Vidz to the channel. Veedu Vidz. Or Veedu for short. We couldn't contain ourselves there, but if you...
I don't know anything about embryology. That's why I stopped. I was like, I'm not go any further. You're going to expose me so nicely, so I thought, you know what?
I'm sorry.
Oh, boy.
The only thing I can think of.
You've got some fans in the chat there. I think you're a legend, and your Zakir-Naik impression is legendary. That was brilliant. Thanks, Veedu. That's awesome. So after that wonderful introduction there, maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, because there are probably viewers that unfortunately haven't seen your channel. I've posted it into the main chat. If you haven't, do yourself a favor, please, as a viewer or as somebody who's in the chat, go and subscribe to that channel. It's brilliant. Over to you, Veedu.
So thank you guys for your interrogation of Zakir-Naik. That was brilliant. Really made me think on my feet. I was like, oh shit. But yeah, no. So basically, I am Veedu. I make satirical comedy videos about religion, predominantly Islam, because that's my background. And I started this around 2 years ago. And the reason why I started this is because an interest or sort of I like acting, or I like sort of comedy and that kind of stuff. And at the same time, I've always been very inquisitive and curious about religion from a young age. And I was actually looking for comedy on Islam by Muslims, and I didn't find any that was self-critical, not simply, oh, BMP. I mean, it's very easy to make fun of far-right people or people who are against Islam. But what about making fun of your own people in a more critical manner and being honest? I didn't necessarily find that. They might have been out there. I didn't find it, so I thought, you know what, let me make it myself. that's basically my reason why I started the YouTube channel. I was in between jobs, so I had some time on my hands. So I thought, let's give it a go. And I'm here 2 years later, still making videos. And I feel like the videos that I make resonate with a lot of people, Muslims and non-Muslims. I don't think it's simply non-Muslims or ex-Muslims watch these videos and say, "Ah, ha, ha." I think I get a lot of messages from Muslims saying, "I'm a Muslim. I'm practicing. I find your videos funny. They're very thoughtful. We support you and keep it up." So that's who I am. That's what I am. And religiously, obviously, I'm from a Muslim background, but I don't believe in Islam. You can call me ex-Muslim. I prefer to say agnostic, because we can discuss why agnostic, why not ex-Muslim, and atheist, and all that kind of stuff later. But I'm just someone who's very much interested in this area, and I'm very much interested in building bridges with different people, whatever your religious background may be. If you're interested in free speech and free thinking, then as far as I'm concerned, we're on the same team.
Cool. So I guess you were born Muslim, were you, or were you converted at some point?
No, I'm born Muslim, born in a sort of Pakistani background. I was actually born in Pakistan, but I came to the UK when I was 1. So virtually my whole life I've been in the UK. But yeah, my whole family's Muslim. Just they're not like extreme Muslim or anything like that. They're just normal sort of. I don't know if you might have met some. Oh, I'm sure you have met a lot of Pakistani everybody everywhere. But we're sort of the more sort of the religion is the more sort of background music. If that makes sense. It's not so down your throat. But it's more
like
background
a cultural
music.
Christian, a cultural Muslim. Maybe they take it a little bit more seriously.
Yeah,
yeah,
absolutely.
Cultural Muslim.
Sorry.
Would you still class it as like an umbrella term, like a cultural Muslim? They might pray, they might go to mosque, but it's not like all encompassing in their life. They still live a Western life for whatever.
Yeah, of course. I mean, my family don't drink alcohol. We always eat halal meat. We don't, eat pork. We don't go to clubs or anything like that. So I would say more of a conservative background, whether that's Christian or Muslim conservative, like family values, that kind of stuff. No boyfriend, girlfriend kind of stuff. But it's not overpowering. It was never overpowering. I never felt I was leaving religion because I had something against my parents, because I had something against my family and the way they brought me up and they forced me to. It was nothing like that. And when I told my parents that I don't believe in Islam anymore, there was no violence, there was no guilt or any sort of verbal or physical abuse or anything like that. I knew they were never going to do that, because that's not who they are. So I'm going to say this word. I was privileged to be in that sort of environment. I'm using that word properly. Unlike some leftists who love to throw that word around, they don't understand what it means.
Yeah.
So what started you off thinking?
So that's an interesting question. I would say that my father has been a very influential person in this thingy, and this is a bit of a story. And he is someone who's a Muslim, but he is someone who is pro-science. He's pro-science, and he's always had this minority opinion. I'll tell you a story. I remember going to Qur'an class, like I think it was Saturday or Sunday, whatever it was, when I was very young. Must have been like primary school level, whatever it was, 9, maybe 10 or 8 years old, whatever. And we'd go there and we learn, and obviously you read the Quran in Arabic, and obviously I don't understand Arabic, whatever it is, I'm Pakistani. But anyway, you learn how to read Arabic, great. And then at the end there'll be like some sort of moral story, right? Oh, the Prophet did this, or some Prophet did that, or a small excerpt, a small part from the Quran. And I remember we used to come back home, and obviously my dad used to ask us, so what did you learn? And I said, oh, we learned this story about, there's a story in the Quran, or I can't remember exactly now, but there's a story of, I'm going to completely ruin it now, but there's a story of where a asteroid comes down from the skies or heavens, whatever you want to call it, down to Earth, and it was white before, but then it became black due to the, and this is the story, I said, due to the sins of humanity, the asteroid becomes black. Now, anyone who knows basic science knows, because it's cooling down or whatever it is, all this whatever. But anyway, I told this to him. This is what we learned, that because of the sins of humanity, and he said, "Well, that's obviously wrong." And I was like, "Hang on, the Imam Saab, the Maulvi Saab, or the Sheikh, whatever, said this. Everyone agreed with him. This is what I'm being taught, supposedly by this religious guy, and you're saying it's wrong. This happened with another story, virgin birth. He said, no, that's wrong. Everything I used to tell him that used to contradict science, he used to say, well, that's obviously wrong. I'm like, what are you on about? You keep sending me to this place. They're telling me one story. You then say, no, that's wrong, because it's not scientific. It's not logical. You got to read a bit more into it. It's metaphorical. And that, it just stuck with me. And then I found that so interesting and satisfying intellectually to find the quote unquote true meaning of the Quranic verse and not the literal one, the more metaphorical, symbolic, more deeper meaning of the verse, rather than, oh, you know, the more literal, easy one. And it just stuck. And then, you know, I became like him. When I was growing up, I never used to debate non-Muslims that much. I used to debate Muslims, saying, guys, you're not reading it right. It doesn't mean this, it means that, you know. For example, I don't know, trying to think of example. So for example, when Moses, sorry guys, if I'm going on, you can stop me, by the way. I feel like I've just gone on for ages.
You're the guest, you speak as much as you want. That's what we're here for.
But you're more than welcome to direct me in any way if you feel like I'm going.
No, but with your story, I do want to hear your story, as Stops has asked you as well.
Oh yeah. So for example, with Moses, you know, the when Moses, obviously when he's older, he confronts the Pharaoh, and he's, you know, them two are having a little beef, and then the Pharaoh brings his one of his magicians or one of his advisors. He's got a staff, and he makes that staff turn into a snake. And then Moses has his own staff, and he turns his staff into a snake, and Moses' snake beats the other guy's snake, right?
Yeah.
And my dad's like, well, that's obviously not true. I mean, not literally anyway. And I said, well, what does it mean then? If you're not saying it's true, what is it? Why is it there? And what does it mean? He goes, this is meant to say that the Pharaoh's right-hand man, or his magician, or whatever it was, provided or produced an argument, and Moses came up with the argument that was better, and he's using these snakes as as symbols or metaphors, whatever. And I thought, well, that makes sense, because obviously, and I thought, well, obviously a staff can't turn into a snake, right? And obviously everyone keeps going on about how beautiful the Quran is, how deep it is, how one word can have 50 meanings. Then why would you settle for the meaning that is sort of lowest in its profoundness, or you know, you see what I'm saying? If you're reading poetry, you're not going to read it surface level or literally and say, well, that's what it means. You go a bit deeper. You say, well, what does a snake mean? What does it symbolize? I thought, oh, duh, that's obviously what it means. How can these Muslims miss this out? Duh. When you read a Harry Potter book or a Lord of the Rings book, you know, you suspend your own reality for a second and you just go with it. So why can't people do it with the Quran and stop taking it so literally? So I went on that sort of tangent when I came to Islam and reading the Quran. Obviously, I was very anti-hadith. I thought hadith is full of nonsense. The Quran, you got to read it properly, and you can't have a meaning of the Quran that contradicts science. So I was one of those guys in the beginning, and that was
so
a
you
lot.
were halfway there, then, because you ignored them.
My dad is still there, by the way, and my dad is still there. So I've gone a bit.
How does he? So this is how he reconciles science. Does he? He sort of gives those things where there's a conflict. He just says, "Oh, it's a metaphorical. It doesn't really mean what it says." Yeah,
I mean, and to be honest with you, and to be fair to him, and to be fair to people who believe in that in Islam, I have read some commentaries of the Quran. Muhammad Asad is one of them. He was the Leopold Weiss. I don't know if he's kind of an interesting character, to be honest with you. He wrote that book, The Road to Mecca, very famous book. It's actually a very good book. It's just in general to read. Actually, his writing is amazing. And I read his commentary of the Quran. And when it came to these instances, I mean, you must have heard the elephants were pelted by the birds, or all these miracles in the Quran that, you know, people obviously contradict science. I found his commentary did not give the literal meaning of the verse. And I thought, okay, there is a guy here who is a scholar, or who is someone who's learned in Islam, and he's giving these symbolic or metaphorical meanings. So there is a space for someone like me, or someone like my father in Islam, albeit we are a minority. And in Muslim countries, if you are a scholar who is propagating that message, you are a persecuted minority. Because he used to listen to some guy in Pakistan some years ago. He's obviously passed away a long time ago, and they used to call him Kafir straight up. And they used to say, oh, he's a Kafir, he's a heretic. He used to say these things, you know, it's not literal, it's all metaphorical. And Fazlur Rahman, who's another Muslim Pakistani guy who used to say this kind of stuff, he actually had to leave the country. He went to America and taught in American universities because he couldn't teach in Pakistan, because obviously they used to call him all sorts of stuff for promoting these kind of values. But I always thought this space for someone like me, that obviously changed later on. But that's my journey, I suppose.
But what was the change? I think that's so. Obviously, you got to a point where you thought some of the verses were metaphorical, and that sort of worked for you for a period. And then what happened from there that you went, okay, I can't even accept these as metaphorical. The whole Quran is problematic. How did that part come about?
There were obviously, so for example, I basically said the hadith is all nonsense, or the vast majority of it is all nonsense. So I didn't have to deal with that intellectually. But all the miracles, or most of them anyway, actually, I think nearly all of them I could interpret metaphorically, except one, and that was the virgin birth. I don't know how you get around that. I have tried so much. Actually, my father did come up with one explanation for that, and I thought, you know what, it does make sense. But I thought, no, it doesn't make sense.
Which is what was that?
So so you know, I haven't memorized the Quran, much to the or parts of the Quran, much to the dismay of my mother, who's very religious. We used to go Quran. God bless her, man. We used to go Quran school every day after school, you know, and she really, you know, just anyway. That's a different story. But anyway, so it says in the Quran, and I'm paraphrasing here, that when Mary says, "Oh, God says to Mary, you will have a son or you'll have a child, whatever it is," and Mary says, "How can I have a child when no man has touched me?" And God says, "You will have a child the way I'm going to mess it up again, but through my methods or the way I do it, whatever it is."
Mm-hmm.
Something like that. I can't remember exactly, and if someone can find the quote, that'd be great. Now he says what that means is by his own method. I mean, God's method, or he's created the universe, and he's created all the laws of the universe. So his method is what the laws of the universe are. So he said, my dad said, Mary is not a virgin. She had a child with another man. At the time she was told this news, she obviously didn't know, and she wasn't with someone. But later on, she was with someone, and that's the whole story. But I said to him, listen, even if I were to accept that, are you telling me that all the prophets, the prophets that came after Jesus were one, and all the companions of the prophets, and all the scholars who came after, they all missed that point, and you seem to get it? I'm like, even if I were to say, you know what, that's a semi-reasonable explanation, everyone missed it. And if that's the case, then what else have we missed? Or what else have they missed that we still believe to be true, if that makes sense?
Yeah.
And I thought, as much as I really, really wanted to believe him, and I, on some level, still do because of my father, and I have great respect for him. But I was like, you know what? This is not how the religion works. You know, there's all these scholars and companions read the book and they say this is what it means, and it's been passed on by generation to generation. It's not even like a 30% people believe in this. It's literally 0.0. Not even that believe that that Mary was not a virgin. And that was one miracle that was stuck in my mind.
What was the cutoff where you said?
Sorry, go sorry.
Say it again, Stops.
What was the cutoff? The actual cutoff where you said, okay, this is unlikely. This is unlikely. And when did you start going? Because I can relate to that very well, where you start thinking. But for me, there was a definite cutoff when I was actually sitting there and saying, no, I need to be brave now. I'm going to now loudly ask the question, what if there is no God? Expecting to be hit by lightning. But there was a cutoff, okay, a definite point in time when I, for the first time, I summoned all my bravery, all my courage, everything, and that was the point when I said I'm free. And this is why I'm wondering if other people have this as well.
My cutoff was, I think it was just over 2 years ago. I think just over 2 years ago, or maybe 3 years ago. I can't remember now. But it was when I was in the Middle East. I was in Dubai, I can't remember which one I was in anyway. And I was working there. I was there for a short-term contract, and I was there with other colleagues, all of which were Muslims. And it was one of those things where we used to work sort of late, and we used to go out to shisha bars to just chill, whatever it is, nice weather, just having a chat. We always used to have a debate about something, football, sports, whatever it was, religion, cars, I don't know what it was. And that day just happened to be, I can't remember what it was. And someone said something about prayer. Now, these guys are all modern Western Muslims, but they're religious as well. And someone said something, oh, I prayed for this, whatever. And I just said, oh, prayer. It's a bit hit and miss, isn't it? Not trying to stir any. I genuinely, I just said, oh, yeah, haha, lol. Like, isn't this sort of a side comment? I wasn't thinking it was going to sting them so much. But anyway, I said, oh, yeah, prayer, it's a bit hit and miss. Actually, that was so I said that, and he goes, "What do you mean by that? It's hit and miss." I said, "Well, some of your prayers come true, some of them don't." Like, what are you trying to say? I'm like, well, I'm not trying to say anything. I mean, some of them come true and some of them don't, right? He goes, so what are you trying to say, that God doesn't accept your prayers? I was like, well, okay. Well, I mean, some of the stuff you pray for, do your prayers always come true? No. So some of them don't. Because yeah, but that's because God doesn't want it to come. He's got something better in store for you. I'm like, so if God wants something to happen, he'll make it happen regardless of whether I pray for it. And if he doesn't want it to happen, then he won't make it happen regardless of whether I pray for it or not. So what's the point of me praying? And that just opened up a huge can of worms. We were there for probably an hour.
Did that guy actually say that to you? Did he say that to you, or did you say to him?
No, I said that to him.
Oh, okay.
I said to him, "What's the, like? If he's trying to rationalize it, saying, sorry, he said to me, they don't come true because God has got something else better in store." And I said to him,
you obviously said it doesn't make a difference in why I pray. In other words,
and when I said that to them, there were 3 of them, right? And they one by one took sort of turns in trying to sort of dismantle my argument or have a go at me. And then there's obviously an appeal to authority. But in the Quran it says this, and Muhammad said that, and this person said this, and put then anecdotal experiences. Oh, I'm like, bruv, come on, you can't. And then after a good hour and a half of them, all 3 of them having a go at me, I can kind of say no non-Muslim, however much they argued with me, even came close to making me a non-Muslim. But my fellow Muslims did it, and I've got honestly, they did it. No non-Muslim even came close. Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins, none of these Christians. The more they said it's something against Islam, I was like, no, Islam is true. They said to me, this was the killer blow. You want that turning point stops. They said to me, you know what? You think like Richard Dawkins. You think like an atheist. And for me, that was like a dagger in the heart. Because I was like, what? You're going to compare me? I'm a Muslim, man. I believe in Muhammad. I believe in... You're going to say, I'm Richard Dawkins? You're going to say, I think like Richard Dawkins? How? That was like, if he'd insulted my mum, I would have been less offended.
Oh, that's brilliant.
And I was like, how on earth? I was thinking, I'm a Muslim. Yes, I'm a minority, but I belong in this religion because I genuinely believed in it. I'm trying to create a space for someone like me in this religion. Yeah, these guys are not extremists, by the way, who I was talking to. They're normal guys.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, of course. No, I know hundreds of those. But can I ask you the opposite question? What kept you in Islam? What was the most convincing thing for you?
What kept me in it was that, firstly, I suppose that was the religion that I was brought up in, so I didn't know anything else. I couldn't get around the idea that there's no God. I mean, get rid of the moral judgment, get rid of heaven and hell, get rid of angels and demons. Just the idea of a creator. You can just say a gender neutral, anything moral neutral creator. I couldn't get my head around that there couldn't be that. I maybe because the way I was brought up, like, you know, the whole, you know, these guys love to do induction. Oh, is anything in this world that's not created, but all that nonsense stuff. So that I couldn't get my head around that. And genuinely, I thought that the version of Islam that my father taught me was a very reasonable one. And I still think it's a reasonable one. I don't think it's a real one because I don't think it's real in the world. But I think it's reasonable. I don't think it's perfect, but I think it's reasonable. And I thought, well, you know, I don't believe in anything that immoral. I'm not promoting violence. I'm for free speech. I don't care if someone draws cartoons of the Prophet. I'm not going to react. So I was like, well, I'm comfortable around. I really was comfortable, you know, albeit in a small, tiny space within the Muslim world, one that is not accepted. But I was like, I can, you know, do it. It's fine.
Okay. And what advice would you give to a Muslim today?
I would say, man, listen, life is too short to be a follower. Life is too short to follow someone else you haven't met or you don't know. Be real, right? I'm going to be like Ali G, bro, innit? Like, you got to check it. I say we're none other than my main man, Stops, right? Like, Robert from Speaker's Corner. Like, we're talking about God and religion, yeah? Anyway. So,
okay, but you have a more spiritual approach. I mean, you don't have a killer argument. You don't say, well, look at embryology, look, that's completely wrong or something. You actually take it on an emotional level. And this is a new approach. I haven't had that before.
Emotional level? Sorry, I don't understand.
What you are doing is you're not telling people, look at the facts, look at the contents, look at this, look at this. You're just saying, just think about it. Think what you are doing. Why are you a follower? And you do the work for yourself and don't listen to others, and that's it. You're appealing to the emotions of a person to go and rationalize themselves, but you don't give them an argument to go and contemplate. What you're doing is just think for yourself. And I've never heard that before.
I mean, I don't know if it's the right approach, wrong approach, but all I'm saying
is... there is no right or wrong here. No. I'm just asking what you would do because, you know, it's a different approach, Yeah,
what I would do is just, like, be real, man. Listen. At the end of the day, you're going to live your life. right? The sheikh, the imam, the prophet, they're not going to live your life for you. No matter how much you devote yourselves to them or whatever,
Right.
man, whatever.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, I'm saying you can, you know what, stay Muslim. I'm not interested in people leaving. People think, oh, you want people to believe something. No, I don't. I don't give a damn what they believe in or what they leave or what they go to. Honestly, genuinely, I do not, because I have met very good Muslims who I would happily join, hands with and work with together. So it's not about a numbers game. It really isn't about a numbers game. For me, you have, at the end of the day, if you are not comfortable in your skin, but you're in the right religion, something is wrong. Right? Yeah. If you find yourself, I don't really agree with that. I don't really agree with this verse about wife beating. I can't really understand it, but Allah said it, so that typical saying, Allahu alam. Oh, God knows best. For me, that is the biggest cop out. That is such an unbelievable cop out. Yeah. Allah knows everything. The Quran is a perfect message, but for the stuff you don't know, Allah knows. Well, I'm sorry if I swear, but what kind of answer is that? What kind of bloody answer is that?
It isn't really an answer. It's like, okay, we've come to the end, we don't have an answer, and so we'll just fall back on that, and that'll make us feel good, and we'll carry on.
Yeah. But my advice is be real to yourself, man. If you believe it, honestly, good for you. If you don't, I understand for security reasons, if you might not be able to reveal whoever you are, but if you can and if you want to, just be real.
And that is so true. That is so valuable. Absolutely. Yeah. And I don't understand why so few people can do that.
Honestly, it is. I'm just being real with you guys. If I'm saying be real, then I've got to be real with you guys as well. After I left Islam, or after I realized Islam left me, I'm going to change it. After I realized Islam left me.
That's a good point, actually.
Yeah, because I'm still me, so it left me, whatever. After it left me, a lot of other things in my life, or in my like intellectual, whatever you can beliefs, whatever you want to call it, they also began to change. It came crumbling down. So before, this is where you might not agree with me, and that's fine. I was center left, hippie. Well, I would say hippie with a no. Actually, I wasn't a hippie. I never smoked anything like that. I never used to have free sex. Nonsense like that. I'm not judging anyone here, but I'm saying I was sort of an SJW. I would say I was in the pre phase of SJW. I believe if I didn't go through the changes, I probably would have been more of that SJW kind of guy. And once I left Islam, everything else changed. I don't know why, but for me, Islam was the center sort of piece of my belief. So once you get rid of, it's like Samson, when he brings down that pillar, everything else falls down, right? So everything else fell down as well, and I had to rebuild what I thought was true or right or wrong or whatever you want to call it. And I became more libertarian,
absolutely, yeah,
right wing. People, when I say right wing, I don't mean BNP. I mean right wing in terms of laissez-faire, free market economy. Because for me, and this is interesting, when I realized, even that this was when I was Muslim as well, I realized, you know what, the idea of a caliphate is not good, and it took me a while to get there, because I thought, well, the caliphate is God's word, and if God is perfect, then why would you not want to implement that on a state level? Because surely, if it's so good and true, you would want it for everyone else, right? And you want to make it law. Surely the law.
But you're using logics now.
Sorry?
You're using logics.
Of course. Logic with a lowercase L, I would say that. But anyway, so I was doing this thing. Whatever. I thought, okay, fine, fair enough. It will be caliphate. And for me, it's like, oh, it's perfect. Well, this. And then I realized, well, what if the Caliphs are Wahhabi? What if the Caliphs Shia? What if the Caliphs are Sufis? If he's like a mad Sufi, he's like a cult kind of leader. Basically, the Caliphate's only going to work if I'm the Caliph, because I know what Islam means. I know how to interpret it. I know it's not literal and blah, 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 whatever nonsense. And I realized, you know what? The Caliphate is only as good as it's only right. Okay, which interpretation of Islam is correct? My one. So if only they agree with me, then their caliphate is going to be good. So I think I came to the conclusion, maybe we should leave religion out of the equation. And then I thought, if we can't trust these people to take care of our religion or to interpret our religion, what makes me think, or what makes you think that these people are going to be qualified enough to take care of my money or my taxes, or to say what's right or wrong, or what's everything came crashing down after that. And I have to give it out to Abdul Karim Saroush, who's an Iranian sort of scholar or philosopher, I think it's like freedom, secularism, and reason, or in Islam. And he said some stuff that I was like, I had to read his book twice because I couldn't get around it. I was like, how could he be saying this? Even though I wanted to agree with it, I was like, bro, he's got some serious cojones coming out saying that, you know, some things like, for example, that even when God revealed the word to Muhammad, he had to interpret it in his own mind. And that's it might sound like something very small, but it's very big, because then you're saying that Muhammad colored the word of God in his own understanding. And that then isn't necessarily the word of God 100%, then is it? So he said that, and I was like, no, that can't be true. Now, obviously, I don't even believe in revelation, but I think he's hinting at that. And even if you believe in that version, it gives you a bit more wiggle room when it comes to reading the Quran and understanding about Islam, which I don't think the other mainstream Muslims give you that leeway. But anyway, so once I got rid of Islam, everything else came crashing down, and I had to reevaluate, what the hell do I believe? What do I stand for? And I think a lot of ex-Muslims can or do go through that. It's like, well, once the centerpiece is removed.
Yes, we hear that a lot. How did you solve, because I've got a question in the chat at the moment, how did you solve that, because your lack of purpose all of a sudden?
That's a very good question. I suppose this is again, this is going to sound hairy-fairy, or you know, so some of those guys on YouTube that do motivational videos or whatever it is. I realize, man, I don't know what is going to happen after my life. I don't know what happened before my life. What I do know is this is my life. If I do actions, the world around me change. If I do good actions, things will get better. If I do bad, they'll get worse. And this is what I was going to mention before to you guys, but I'll say it now. I was working. I used to work for this company. I was like a temporary job, and they were all Muslims because it was in East London. And they were kind of religious. We used to work near East London Mosque, so you could hear the azan, mashallah. So every time the azan went, we used to go pray, whatever. Anyway, so they were kind of like a religious bunch. And one of the guys there who was more religious, he said, "You know what, man?" And he's a very nice guy. He said, "Oh, you know, I was telling my," he's talking about Ramadan. He goes, "For me, number one thing is ibadah, you know, worship of God. If you remove that, then nothing's left. Like if you remove the worship of God, that's the highest goal. If you get rid of that, nothing else in life is meaningful or makes sense, because that's your sole purpose. You're going to die. You're going to go heaven or hell." And I thought for a second. I mean, this guy had a wife and kid. I didn't say it, but I thought it. If, for example, assuming you as a devout Muslim, if somehow by some miracle I prove to you there is no God, it's all made up, the Quran is all made up, great. Are you telling me you're going to stop loving your wife? Are you going to stop loving your child? Are you going to stop being friends with the people you're friends with? Are you going to stop playing football if you enjoy that? No, you're going to be the same guy. Certainly I would be. I asked myself that question. I'm the same guy. And I told my parents this when I came out to them as gay. I'm joking. I wasn't gay. I came out to them as I couldn't resist myself. And I said to them, if I hadn't told you that I'd left Islam, would you have known? And they said no. I said, exactly. I'm the same person. Yes, okay, fine. I don't pray. But I didn't come home one day with a red Mohican, with a nose piercing and drunk, and, you know, with my new boyfriend and say I'm an atheist. I came home with the same guy. And if I hadn't told you, you would have known. So you are you. If that makes sense. You are you. You are not Islam. You are not ex-Muslim. You are not that. You are you. So you decide what your life is. You decide what it means. Simple as that.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? So what for you has been some of the challenges, obviously, coming out to the public? Because obviously it's one thing to, you know, come out and talk to your parents and your family, and that sounds like that went, you know, reasonably well compared to, you know, a lot of other things. But what's kind of been the response that you've got when you put yourself out in the public, as, you know, myself and Stops and others have done? You obviously get a lot of feedback, some good, some, or more than some, not so good. How have you dealt with that?
I would say overwhelmingly it's been very positive. And that's because the type of comedy or the brand of comedy that I make or I want to create is not, I mean, you've heard of that guy, Sight and Atheist, right?
Yes, yeah.
I personally,
the cartoons.
Yeah, I personally love his comedy. I really do. I find it really funny. But that kind of comedy, I know when Muslims watch that, they are not going to be thinking, "Oh, he makes a really good point." They'll be thinking, "What is this guy? He's so disrespectful. He's got no." So I was very conscious of that because obviously I was Muslim. I saw this stuff, and I know how much it can stings a Muslim. So I'm not saying I get it right all the time, but my conscious brand of comedy is I want Muslims to watch it and be able to enjoy it, or I want moderate Muslims to watch it and be able to enjoy it. If I can get that right more often than not, I find that people they will support you and they're more forgiving of you. If you just come out with rage and say, "Oh, your Muslims are stupid, Muhammad's this," that's not going to convince. That's not going to convince a lot of people, a lot of Muslims, of your arguments, or that you have a valid voice in the conversation.
Yeah, so I think what you're bringing is a different approach, which I think, again, comedy is not something that I'm particularly good at. Stops is probably better, and you've got that approach, and it does bring down barriers, doesn't it? So people can laugh. As you say, it's not that you're not targeting the the ultra orthodox, hardliners. It's the moderates who still consider themselves Muslim, like you and your family did, but they can have a laugh at it as well. There is a sense of humor, and they're not going, "Oh my God, somebody's going to bludgeon me over the head," or "I can't laugh about this," or feel guilty about it.
Exactly.
No, that's
Is
awesome.
there anything that you would like to talk about instead of just picking your brain all the time?
I think these are riveting questions, and I feel like I almost feel bad because I've been speaking for so long. If you guys maybe want to add something, or maybe some observations on, I mean, earlier before we were talking about the difference between atheist and agnostic. So I don't know if Stops, you were saying you have something to say about that, or is there a difference, or is it not really a difference? Is it the same thing? Semantics.
It's very. I'm a simple guy. Okay, for me, it's either you believe there's a God or you don't.
Yeah.
We all, or let's say none of us, actually knows. Nobody has knowledge regarding God. So if you believe that there is a God, you can't be, you can't really say, "I don't believe," or "I don't know there's a God, but I believe it anyway." It doesn't make sense. And you can't say, "Well, I don't believe a God, but I'm sure there is one." You can't say that either. So this knowledge thing with being gnostic or agnostic, that you don't know, means that nobody knows. So what's the point of the word agnostic? It doesn't make sense. So either you believe that you're a theist, or you don't, you're not a theist. That's it.
There's a couple of extra things there. So broadly speaking, that's true. And the only distinctions, and this is not me personally, but this is listening to, other smart people as well. So, taking a broad range of different ideas and so forth. What's often put forward is you either got a theist or a non-theist. Now, non-theist is the blanket term, or the exact opposite of theist, meaning theist is anybody that believes, generally speaking, in a supernatural entity of some kind. Now, non-theist is somebody that does not, but that also includes those that don't know. So, and the philosopher that's talked about this talks about dogs, trees, babies, people that have never been exposed to the idea of a supernatural. Those would be non-theists. The moment you're exposed to an idea of a supernatural, and somebody explains and they tell you the attributes, they tell you certain things about this God. Now you've got information coming. Now you're at the point of either I believe it or I don't. And that's where the atheist position would come in. Now, I would agree with Stops in the sense that knowledge is a subset of belief. So if you say I don't believe, it automatically means you don't know. But we sometimes say that because when we talk in normal language, when we're talking out in the street, we'll say, "Oh, I know the sun's going to rise." What we really mean when we get into a more accurate conversation, or what we should say, is, "I believe with a high degree of certainty the sun will rise tomorrow." Yeah. We don't know because the Earth could explode. There's an asteroid impact or whatever the case is. Yeah. So that's where I think sometimes the overlap comes in. So if we're talking at a more accurate level, most people should consider themselves atheists, because that automatically incorporates an agnostic. I guess that's the way to put it.
Fair enough. I mean, that makes sense. I've heard of this.
I do understand that there is a.
Yeah.
No, sorry, carry on.
No, please go.
I was just going to say, I do understand that some people have a little bit of a challenge with the word atheist, because they see certain, call it hardcore atheists, and they go, "Oh, I'm not sure I want to be associated with that," whoever that might be. I haven't come. Well, I suppose the more hardcore atheist that I've probably come across is somebody like an Aaron Ra. but he's a very smart guy. Now, he will come and say he knows God does not exist. Now, somebody could make that argument, but the only way they could do it is a philosophical argument where they go, hang on a moment, you've given me these attributes of God. They're mutually contradictory. Therefore, your God does not exist. And I know that because of there's a contradiction in the qualities or the attributes that you've given. So that would be one way. And Aaron Ra is sort of on that end of the scale where he goes, I know God does not exist. He absolutely does not exist 100%. Whereas Dawkins or myself or Stops would be at a 6.9 on the Dawkins scale. You know, we don't believe it with a high degree of certainty, but we could never say 100%. Now, it depends on the God, of course, but that would be
I was just going to say that, exactly. Because the Christian...
because you've got a much higher...
definitely don't exist. That's impossible.
Yeah, so depending on the nature of the God and so forth, then you could go further. And then you've got to just give your burden of proof. But that's the other thing as well, that's been talked about, is that we need to give reasons why we don't believe. Just saying I don't believe or I lack a belief, especially from some of the philosopher and a couple of the guys that I've listened to, I'm convinced now that we do need to say something more than, hey, I just don't believe. You could say, hey, I haven't got any good reasons. You've never given me good reasons. But that in and of itself isn't enough. I don't think personally, having listened to people, I'm persuaded you need to say more. Like, for example, the problem of evil or divine hiddenness or whatever it may be. I'm actually going to get somebody on here at some point in the next couple of months that's going to go through all the arguments for atheism or non-belief, if you prefer, so that people are armed with those things, because I do think we need to give those. However, I'm with Stops in the sense that when we go and chat, Muslims are making the positive claim, so they need to defend it. And challenging our worldview gives them a back door to avoid dealing with or giving reasons why they believe. And so I'm with Stops in that sense. I'm less likely to want to do that because I want to hear what the reasons are and challenge their reasons for the positive claim, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
But you do it in a different way. I'm guessing you don't have that sort of a thing. You're not going into the philosophy, or maybe you do. I mean, share with us whether you do or would you want to, or is yours purely along the lines of, hey, I want to do a bit of satirism in a way that reaches people, gets them to laugh, or is there more behind that you actually do at some point want people to think critically like you've done? What's the sort of end goal for you?
So for me, like I said, sorry, 1 second, sorry. Yeah, so there's quite a few things. I mean, what you're saying, I don't disagree with what you're saying at all. I mean, it makes perfect sense. It's well thought out. But for me, I personally do not believe that the Abrahamic God exists, because if there was such a God, I think he would sue all these prophets and all these people that you've done such a bad PR. You've made me look like an absolute pillock. Whatever. I don't think it's consistent. I don't think it's coherent. I think it's blatantly human values superimposed on some invisible man up in the sky. But the idea of a creator, I mean, if you, like I think I was saying this before, if we were to remove the moral judgment and the, I don't know what you want to call it, this jealousy or this tyrannical impulse or desire for control and power, or if you took all of that away from God and imagined a hand or a finger that pushed the first domino and we were to call that a creator, if that existed, would it change my life? Not really. If tomorrow you said to prove to me it didn't exist, would it change my life? Not really. So I heard this term once used. I can't remember who the scientist was, but someone asked a scientist, he's speaking about universe and this and that. Do you believe in God? Do you think someone? And he said, I'm not an atheist. I'm an atheist. I don't even care. It's not even relevant or even interesting. I mean, tomorrow if we said there is a God, what would change? Pretty much nothing, because all the communications that God has made, supposedly Qur'an, Bible, Torah, all other books, they have failed the test of science, which is the only way which we can verify things in the world. And I, in my opinion, I certainly have not. I'm not convinced God could talk to us in a way that would satisfy the needs of that time it was revealed, the message, and the times of 1,000 years in the future and 2,000 years in the future. I don't think that's physically possible. I don't even think it's even required, to be honest with you. But this is a question, What if you believe that a God exists, but you don't want to worship him? What do you call that person?
I guess a believer in something. I mean, to be honest, and I've said it here on the show, there is a version. I would direct you, if you are interested, go and read a series of books, at least the first three, on books called Conversations with God by Neil Donald Walsh. If you want to have a conception of a God that is unconditionally loving, that does not punish us, that if it were true, you would have none of the problems that you have with the Abrahamic gods, then I would encourage you. That God, if it existed, I would want to have a relationship. Now, that's saying a lot for me, because I'm a fairly strong atheist in the sense, definitely towards the Abrahamic gods, if nothing else. But that concept of a God is more kind of, takes a bit of Buddhism, takes a bit of other things, but it's a view of a God that one could have. And again, some people use the word spiritual. I mean, that's kind of a bit woolly, but I don't know.
Yeah.
But that would be a version for you to look into if there's still a view inside yourself that, hey, maybe there is something out there, but it's not necessarily going to interfere with my life. But if there is, I want a concept of that God that I could believe in if it existed. Then that would be, I would direct you to that set of books, and then come back to me and say, hey, Rob, here's something incoherent, or here's something that's a problem. I'd be interested. I haven't found it, but I'm open to that being the case. And maybe in a future show, I would take on the quote believing view of that and present it to Stops and everybody here that's critical, and people can go, okay, Rob, here's a problem, and then I could change my mind. But there is a version of a God that I go, yeah, none of the problems of the Abrahamic God that I can see.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, even if you were to draw this perfect God, I don't know if you've even proved he exists. I mean, that's also the other part. Even if you were to agree, yes, this is what the perfect God would look like, this is what he would believe, this is what he would say, does he exist? I mean, again, then you're sort of believing in something that that doesn't exist, but it makes you feel happy. Somewhat, I don't know if that's delusional or self-comforting. I don't really know, to be honest with you. And I've taken a more practical approach: is what are the actions in my life that I can do that will impact me, as opposed to some infinite wisdom high in the sky that is overlooking me. I'm just so over that. I'm really, really over that. That doesn't interest me or excite me in the slightest.
I like the expression you use, self-comforting.
Yeah, I don't mean to be. I really don't mean to be insulting to anyone who has that thingy. But I mean, that's
but it's a very good expression, I think.
It is self-comforting. I mean, it's like he's looking out for me now, and when I pray, he's going to be there listening to me. So okay, fair enough.
I agree with you. And even the concept of God that I think could be for those people that need the bridge, because like you say, there's sometimes going from a belief to non-belief, that's a big step. And if there was a deistic type of a God, for want of a better word, that people could embrace while jettisoning the Abrahamic God, or Allah in this particular case, then that could be a step. But you're right, I would never attempt to bring forward an argument to go, hey, here's why I think a God of any sort exists. But it's a bridging that drops all the negativity of the other God. But I think you made a good point that could our purpose be, because somebody mentioned in the comments there, could the purpose, and you've articulated it there, to be the best we can to impact in a positive way our family, the community, and to some extent the world at large? Would that be a purpose for our lives in some way, whatever that is for each of us?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, this is if you go into your home after a long day at work and there's no food in the fridge, you're not going to think, oh, is there a God or not? You think, where the hell is food? I need to get some food. Oh, okay, now I need to go shopping. That's a practical thing. You're not going to think, oh, is there a God or not? You don't care if there's a God if you've got no food in your stomach. You don't care if there's a God. Personally, I don't. If I've got a really bad relationship with my parents or with my family, or that's irrelevant. All those huge, which as interesting as much as I love to discuss it, it's actually a distraction from a lot of these people who talk about God and that kind of stuff, who imams and sheikhs and even these Christians who some of their personal lives are absolutely atrocious. It's all well and good intellectualizing about God, but if your own family life sucks, then to be honest with you, your God doesn't mean anything. His value is zero. It's less than zero, because you're wasting your time talking about something which you can't prove, you can't touch, you can't feel, and he can't touch you or feel you. But you're talking about that, whereas the people who can touch and feel you are impacted by your own actions. You're ignoring them, or you're being negligent. So that's my problem. Like, if he exists, great. Doesn't exist, great. I know I've got to pay the bills. I know I've got to get up in the morning and do my own stuff. I'm going to focus on that. That's just the way I've got around it, to be honest with you.
Yeah, that's a very pragmatic approach and a good one, because it's like you say, if prayers were answered at any better than chance, now you would have a good practical reason to perhaps believe. But because, as you quite rightly said, it's no better than chance.
Yeah.
Words, it's very likely that it is chance, and you can't and people can't demonstrate that it's not. Well, then let's live with what we can practically do in life. But I can't argue that religion in some sense doesn't have a utility value. If somebody says, and you mentioned it earlier, hey, the only reason that I'm not murdering and raping and robbing and doing things is because I believe in God, let them believe. I want them to have that delusion, because otherwise they're a dangerous person. Now, to what degree would they actually go and do what they say? Who knows? Probably most people wouldn't, the couple that have said it. But if that's the reason, keep believing, because you're a danger to everybody around you if you suddenly stop believing. But I think that's rare.
If I met someone who said to me, "Oh, religion is the only thing stopping me from killing, murdering," I said, "Mate, you don't need a religion. You need a psychotherapist. Okay, you don't need some God telling you not to kill. You need a serious psychotherapist. You need some therapy. You sort out your family life or your whatever it is, because that is then you're hanging on by a thin thread. That if this guy accidentally stumbles across some material online or whatever it is that says actually there's no God, then that's a ticking time bomb. Let's nip the problem in the bud and say, mate, you can be a perfectly good human being without having to believe or disbelieve in anything that is supernatural or not. Those things are not prerequisites, or shouldn't be prerequisites for you not killing and stealing. I have this. I know someone who is a Salafi, and his wife is a Salafi. Pretty hardcore, no music, no intermingling, no nothing, right? And I'm not going to say who I found out by, but I found out that they confronted an ex-Muslim very close to them, and they were this person, ex-Muslim, was saying, you know what, yeah, I don't believe in Islam, and they were very close friends, and they're like, oh my God, how could you not? All this kind of stuff, right? They were very close friends for like his wife and this person, and the wife was in shock. So she got the husband to sort of maybe talk to her, be like, listen, Islam is true, blah blah blah. And he even said, like, if you're not ex-Muslim, so if you are ex-Muslim, you can literally go out and cheat on your husband, cheat on your spouse. You can drink, you can do all sorts of stuff. Why aren't you doing it? Because I know I'm a Muslim. If I was in your position, I would be doing those things. I would cheat on my wife, and his wife is sitting there. I'm thinking, bruv, like, how insulting is that to your wife to say, if I didn't believe in God, love, if I didn't believe in God, darling, I would cheat on you. Then for me, the question is not God, is do you even love your wife? Are you seriously? For me, it's not about God anymore. If I was there, but bro, do you love your wife? And I'm saying to the wife, how comforting is that for you to hear your own husband say, if I didn't believe in God, I would cheat on you. I wouldn't feel bad about it because God's not going to punish me afterwards. So I think even though in the short term it might stop some people, in the long term, it is making people more immoral. Because imagine being in that kind of relationship where you are not cheating on your wife just because God is watching you. I mean, I don't know if you're going to love your wife. I don't know I don't know what kind of relationship you're going to foster. I don't know what kind of relationship you're going to have with your kids. If you're literally just hanging on by the thread that there's a God. If that God was to go, or that thread were to, snap, your whole life, if what you say is true, would be a complete shambles if it isn't already.
So, but Veedu, do you remember the thing with Hamza Tzortzis when he was caught on Ivy Madison? This right. Flirt and sex thing? Well, the excuse was, well, he's allowed to have a second wife, so why shouldn't he go out and look for one?
Allahumma salli ala Muhammad wa sallam. Subhanallah, this is a beautiful apologetics. Mashallah, the brother, was that true? Because I felt, because I know some people, they can, their names can get caught up in things. I wasn't sure if it was 100% true or not, so that's why I didn't think one way or the other.
That he was on the database. He was. Oh, absolutely.
Wow.
I challenged him.
Wow. I mean, what can I say?
Said, listen, if you don't come clean, I'm going to make a video about you. And we went to him and we said to him, okay, look, you've got two choices. Either you go and you come clean, or we're going to expose you. What is it? And then he came out. Yeah.
His answer was, I'm allowed to have a second wife.
No. This was other people making the excuses for him.
Oh, other people making excuses for him. Oh my God.
Yeah, using the rationality you talked about, which is, hey, let's find a way in Islam to justify this.
Okay, that's a great point you just made there, because if religion is the only thing stopping you, then trust me, there are people who will find loopholes within because now they realize, you know what, I have these desires. Maybe I don't love my wife. Maybe I want to do this. I want to drink. I want to do that. They will find ways within that religion to circumvent those, morals or those things that they wouldn't do, and they'll do it, whether it's temporary marriages or second wives without telling the first wife, because technically speaking, according to some schools of thought, you can do that. You can have a second wife without telling the first. There are examples. I think it was the Hanafi school of thought. I can't remember which was. There'll be some others. So people will find a way. So the best way, in my opinion, is confront them and say, you do not need this religious infrastructure to not kill someone. You don't need that. And in fact, a lot of the time, the religious infrastructure is what is forcing people or pushing them to kill other people. Not all the time. I'm not saying every Muslim or every Christian could go around killing someone, but a lot of our history within Europe and the Middle East, if you go back a few hundred years, it's around that kind of stuff. And you do not need that. I would say that it's an ambitious goal, but I think in the long run, that's, for me, the most sound way of convincing someone. Yeah. So that's what I think anyway. I could be completely wrong, but I just don't feel like...
Come on, and then you have Nurman. What did he do?
Yeah, I just saw that comment. No one can't. Yeah. And then he's going to say, oh, brother this and brother that. I'm like, brother, I don't give a damn. I don't give a damn. I really don't. But that's an interesting thing, because a lot of people asked me to make a video taking the mic out of a situation. And I was very close to doing that. But I didn't. Because I felt, and maybe I'm wrong, maybe I'm not, I don't know. I felt like I would be playing the man and not the ball.
I agree with you.
You see what I'm saying? Because then it's about
moral high ground. Yeah.
But having said that, this guy is saying, if you're talking to someone on the phone that's a female or the opposite gender, you can't do that late at night. You can't do this. You can't do that. You can't do this with women. Okay, so you've set yourself up now. You're saying all these things. Now, if you turn around and even break one of those rules, then is it not fair for us to point that out? I don't know.
I think,
for me,
I think you could. I think when it becomes hypocrisy, by the way, I want to welcome TJ. And TJ, good evening, is another co-panelist. I'll come to you in a second. You're welcome to ask Veedu anything that you fancy as well. But I think on that point, once you become a public figure, you put yourself out there in public in the sense that you are sharing your ideas with the public and expecting some kind of a response. And you are being hypocritical. I think at that point, you've now put yourself into a position where you can be ridiculed, where, unless you're going to apologize and change your ways, you are now a target and a legitimate one, in the sense of, being challenged in satirical videos or any other method, that's non-violent, in the sense of like an intellectual challenge. Yeah.
I was very close to doing it, but then my mum's a big fan of his, so I thought, forget it. I'm not going to get to So I can say all the intellectual stuff. At the end of the day, if my mom's a fan of his, I'm not going to do it. So that's the real reason. I gave all the nice intellectual reasons before, but then that's the real reason.
Yeah, nobody can argue with that. TJ, have you got anything? You've been listening in. Have you got any questions or any thoughts you want to put to Veedu?
I guess my question would be, because I had a friend actually who recently went to the UK, and he told me that he didn't really like the vibe. He was walking around and he just said that he noticed a change from when he last visited, which was about maybe 10 years ago. He just no longer, I don't want to say that he no longer felt safe, but he definitely sensed tension.
Sorry,
and,
could you repeat that? So I think your voice cut out in the beginning. I didn't quite hear that, sorry.
No, I was saying, have you noticed, within the UK, that things have gotten less safe, or maybe have gotten a little more tense among the different communities?
That's an interesting question. It's very hard to tell, because depending on where you live, where I live is majority white, sort of people. There's a few ethnics, but not that many. So for me, it's perfectly fine. I go to work, I'll come home, and that's the end of that. I'm not the kind of guy that goes out much anyway, to be honest with you. But so for me, I might not see it, but there are communities within the UK that, forget Islam and religion, there is racial tensions already existing, cultural tensions that are existing. And now when you add Islam into the mix, it makes things a lot more sort of volatile and worse. It doesn't solve anything, it makes it worse. And with the rise of this identity politics game, it has really made it hard for someone to say something without being judged on their character, their skin color, their this, or what they have between their legs, or whatever it is. It has really made it hard. I'm absolutely sick and tired of it. Seriously, don't get me started on that. Okay, I need to calm down. But yeah, I'm absolutely sick. I really am. Honestly, it is one of the most racist things. Not even to the white people that they obviously discriminate against. Obviously, they're being racist against white people, but they're being so racist in such a paternalistic way against the brown and black people that they're sort of patting their head on, saying, "Look, I've got this guy," and he agrees with me. Suck up, man. Who the hell do you think you are? But I think certain areas they are feeling the tension. But that tension's been there, I think, even before Islam. But I would like to say, within the UK, I think it's different for America, that, and this is going to be controversial, but whatever, that the type of Muslim, let's put it, you got class, you have eggs, you class A, class B, whatever, like Jose Mourinho was saying, whatever, you have some Waitrose you got from Tesco value. In Britain, the vast majority of Muslims that are here are of lower value. And that's not to diss them or anything. My friends are from that class, or are children of that class when they first came, and that's because they wanted cheap labor for factories and whatnot. That's what they wanted. So they just got a lot of them from those areas in Pakistan. But when the Indians came, not all Muslim, vast majority Hindu, and the Sikhs, they came, I believe it was under the Thatcher government, and they were like the sort of middle management sort of kind of work. So the Hindus that came over here and the Sikhs that came over here were from a different social strata than the Muslims. I believe in America, the Muslims that went over there were much better trained or had much better education and career prospects than the Muslims that came to Europe. So which is why the Muslims in Europe are unfortunately much more sort of redneck than the ones in America, which is why a lot of problems are happening in Europe. And obviously there's more of them as well. So I don't know if that answers the question, but yeah, you have to look at the demographics and how, when the people came, what was their outlook on life? Where did they come from? A lot of the Pakistanis that come over here that are up north come from a place in Pakistan called Mirpur, which by Pakistani standards is pretty backwards. So you can imagine, when they came here, they were like, what the hell? And I've heard by many people that the people who came from Mirpur back in the 70s or whatever it was, still live in that Mirpur place, land, in their mind anyway, they're still in Mirpur. The people in real Mirpur have moved on. And when you add, racial tensions and identity crisis, which a lot of people went through, I went through that as well, it is very messy and very nasty. There's no real clear answer. And when you mix in religion, especially the one of Islam, which is very it's not only strict but rigid in a sense that it's us and it's them and it's haram and it's halal. Whereas I don't think Hindus and Sikhs have this problem. They integrate perfectly fine. If you go to any Hindu Sikh guy or girl in this country, in the UK, honestly, other than them being brown and having a turban or whatever it is, there's no difference. Literally, there's not that much difference. The Muslim, there's always going to be a difference, and you can say it's wrong is right. That's the reality. That's the reality.
Yeah, because I come from a Punjabi background, and from the Sikh. Yeah. Vadiya, yaar, vadiya. No, I was because it's weird because the Punjabi Sikhs and Hindus and the Punjabi Muslims culturally there are some things which we do have in common, but definitely see the mindset. Yeah, the mindset is different. Some of the Punjabi Pakistanis speak, they can speak Punjabi, and I didn't know that the schools had banned it from being taught in schools. So I found that kind of interesting when you have a bunch of Pakistani Punjabis who can't speak a lick of Punjabi and that they still consider themselves as Punjabi. So for me, that was kind of a disconnect, because for us, our language is pretty much our whole identity. It begins with language. And
of course.
And so when I got to meet some of these people, they're like, yeah, I don't I can understand it, but I don't really speak it. It's kind of like a backward language. And I was like, oh, Interesting.
That is such nonsense. I wish I knew more Punjabi. I really wish. When you go, sorry to interrupt you, but when I with the uncles that come around my house and they're speaking Punjabi, they're cracking their Punjabi jokes. When I go to Pakistan, it is such a juicy and bubbly language, and this comes back to this whole this sort of cultural colonialism or mental colonialism. We want to imitate Arabs. Bruv, don't get me started on that. We want to imitate people that have such little respect for us. And I'm talking about South Asians. It is unbelievable. It is the most humiliating thing I've seen when Pakistanis and Bengalis in the UK walk around in Arab clothes. I'm not talking about Shawar Kameez, I'm talking about thobes. I'm like, bruv, you can't run in a thobe. And I actually heard from one person, this is interesting, a Muslim guy, one of the Muslim guys I was with in the UAE. He said the thobe, you know the thobe, it's just the one piece suit. The one piece thing. You know what it is?
I call it a dress.
A dress. You know what? You are right, because part of the Sharia this is gonna sound stupid, but part of the Sharia requirements for a man, this is what I heard from him, is that you have to be able to run, ride a horse, and fight. You can't do that in that dress. And that dress was apparently created for hermaphrodites because it's gender neutral. A man can wear it, a woman can wear it. No, you're not going to know who's a man or a woman. So ironically, these bad man rude boys are walking around like, London in it, blood, like, oh, big man in it, our man's come from Salah, dressed in hermaphrodites clothes. So you can make of that what you want in it, blood, but I'm not gay in it, don't get it twisted, bruv. So whatever.
No, I definitely see that because, they denied their ancestry, and I've seen that from like a lot of Pakistanis who basically, from my point of view, from my vantage point, I'm like, you're basically, Islamized Hindus.
Yeah.
And you guys think you're, and like they're walking around like, I'm Arab because I have an Arab last name, or I'm from Central Asia or Persia. And I'm thinking to myself, if tomorrow, if I convert to Christianity and I change my name to John Smith, I'm not a white dude.
Exactly.
I'm not European. It just boggles my mind. Like, it's like an identity crisis. Because
you know what? You're 100% right. You are 100% right. I remember having these same conversations in a sixth form. Like, obviously, they were Pakistani guys, whatever. We were chatting about, oh, yeah, Muslims were sick back in the days. And this guy's Pakistani. Because, we had the golden period of Islam, the Ottomans, the Arab. No, bro, they're Turkish. They're Arab. You're not Turkish or Arab. Why? Why am I going to big up and say, oh, I'm part of that clique when I'm not part of that clique? You see what I'm saying? I'm not going to say, oh, yeah, we were sick back in the days of the Renaissance, the Italians. Bro, you're not Italian. Why are you saying you're part of that same culture? The same is true for a Turk or an Arab. A Turk or an Arab will never claim or take credit for the achievements of the Indians or the Pakistanis or the Mongolians. So why are we doing it for them? I really don't understand that. Well, just because we're Muslim. Okay, well, go to their countries and try and get a bloody citizenship. Let's see how that goes, because you can't. So you can.
While we're on ethnic groups, I've got a question from the chat. How do you see the anti-Semitism?
That's a very vague question. Is there something specific? I mean, within the.
You mean from Muslims?
Yeah.
You know what? It is so entrenched. I didn't realize how entrenched it was. It is so entrenched that it's not even. Do you know Imran Khan, the Pakistani cricket player and the politician, right?
Yeah.
He was, I think he was, he was married to Jemima, who was from a Jewish family, and she's Jewish, whatever. And obviously they got divorced a long time ago, whatever. Anyway, but the sort of more, his critics say, oh, he's a Zionist because he was married to a Jew, even though they divorced a long time ago, whatever. He's still a. And this is what they were saying this in Parliament. You're a Yehudi ka bacha, which means you're a son of a Jew. And that's a legitimate criticism, a legitimate insult. Now, can you imagine someone saying in this British Parliament or American Senate, oh, he's the son of a Muslim, and using it as an insult? It would just, Islamophobia, this, that, whatever. But there, it's like, oh, son of a Jew. No big deal. It's not even a thing. It's not even a thing. Like, if I say the N-word, like, oh, there's punch to that. Yehudi ka bacha is son of a Jew. It's not even like a thing. It's like saying, oh, you're an idiot, bruv. That's how bad it is. It's not good, man. It's not good.
So when you say it's not bad, it's as in like that insult isn't even seen as an insult, whereas it
No,
should
it's
be.
not even seen as something that, you know, like if I said the N word, like if Boris Johnson said the N word, you'd be like, he'd resign, you would apologize, his career would be destroyed. If I say that in Pakistan, it's like, okay. Like, I'm not going to come out on Twitter the next day and say, I'm really sorry, or I didn't mean it, I've got nothing against the Jew. No. Like, you see what I'm saying? Even if there are racist people in this country, if someone publicly say something racist, they're going to be called out for it, their career is going to be destroyed, all sorts of stuff is going to happen to them. There'll be real life repercussions. That's not the same in Pakistan and a lot of the Muslim world. So you can complain about all the Islamophobia, and I've got a problem with that word, but even then, Islamophobia, racism in this country, but if you're caught out saying something racist or saying something genuinely hateful against a particular people, you get called out for it, and more often than not, your career takes a hit. Whereas I don't know if that's true in the Muslim countries.
No, probably not. You're right.
Yeah, because I know, because I remember I saw a picture. It was like on the Pakistani passport, it says that this passport is recognized in every other country except for Israel. And I was oh, interesting. And you have to declare, if you apply for a visa or if you take your citizenship test or something like that, you have to declare, Ahmadis as like, non-Muslim.
Oh yeah. This is another thing that really annoys me. So can I say a funny story that I was in Pakistan just recently, just before Christmas, this last year, whatever. And I was with my cousin, and my cousin, I didn't realize it before, but he is somewhat of a free thinker. I think he's still Muslim, but I think he's secretly skeptic or agnostic about many things. But anyway, so he showed me this guy that is a journalist in Pakistan. His name is Hassan Nisar. He's a pretty famous guy. I would definitely advise you to check him out. I'm not sure if his talks or whatever is translated to English, but if you can find them, they're great. He basically takes these mullahs to task, and he absolutely obliterates them. But anyway, so there was one guy who was Hassan Nisar, this guy. He was on a show. He got a question from a caller, or someone wrote in and said, I had some eye infection or whatever it was. Obviously, the guy's Pakistani Muslim. He went to Australia to get an operation on his eye because they couldn't do it in Pakistan. Anyway, the eye operation went well. Everything's good. But then afterwards, I found out that the doctor who operated on me was a Jew. Has my eye become haram, or has what should I do? And obviously the guy he's like, I tell him that your eye has become Jewish. It's such can you imagine someone saying in this country, well, mate, I went to the doctor's, everything's all right, but the guy's a Muslim, like, I don't know what I should do now, shall I chop my arm off? Like, what is wrong with you? Like, this is the sort of nonsensical stuff. And he actually said this is a sickness. Hassan Nisar said this, not his eye. This way of thinking is a sickness. That because the doctor's a Jew, that his eye has become haram. I mean, where do I go? Where do I go now?
But a lot of people say, hey, it's okay if people have a religion, there's no harm done. And then you hear stories like this, and that's obviously a very mild version, and it gets...
it's funny, but it's not funny at the same time.
No, it's not. And it affects, the brain. And so it's almost like, a non-intellectual virus that's there, and it affects some people more than others. So, that's part of the reason why I challenge it, because it does have real world effects. And that one's kind of a funny story, but it's
absolutely
serious at the same time.
100%.
You know what? It never registered with me before. I have never seen an openly Jewish person. I mean, in the Middle East, I never realized that. But now that you mention it, absolutely, I haven't seen that at all. Not once. I've seen all sorts of things, but never Jewish.
Well, they are. No one is fighting their cause in the Middle East. In Muslim countries anyway, as far as I've seen it. I mean, their numbers are dwindling. They're moving to Israel or Europe or whatever it is. And to be honest with you, you can't really blame them, because when you have such inherent anti-Semitism and accepted anti-Semitism within the Muslim world, you're not going to say, oh, I'm Jewish, check me out, I've got nice bagels. I don't think you're going to do that. And
like it's being spread from one generation to the next, and that's that's the thing that gets me, is that sort of mindset. I mean, it's been with us. I mean, I doubt it's ever going to go away, like, completely, just like with all other forms of racism, but see how it actually pollutes the mind.
Yeah, but look at this guy from my era. I mean, he's in Speaker's Corner, and he is speaking as a Muslim, and he says, "Keep this Jew away from me because I cannot bear the stench of this Jew." Come on, how
That's
can you do that?
disgusting.
Who is that, Stops?
This is the boss of. This is Abdul Rahim Greem, the boss of.
Oh, he is such a band, that guy. Honestly, he is
He's a convert, isn't he?
Yeah, he's a convert, the white guy with a big beard.
Wives now, so he's sitting pretty, huh?
Yeah, I remember watching that, and that is such a reprehensible, disgusting thing to say. Again, if he was on the receiving end of that, and someone said this Muslim stinks, or it would be, oh my God, we're so oppressed. Oh. But he's more than happy to dish it out. I mean, this is the hypocrisy that I see. Muslims, I believe, are ideologically and politically more aligned in a strange, paradoxical way with the left, even though they're not liberal, they're not hippie-dippy, they're not for free sex, they're not for all that stuff. But somehow, the one thing that unites them is this victimhood, constant self-victimization. And I think that was one of the things that I was just fed up of, sick and tired of. That why are we always victims? Even in our own countries, where we are majorities, we run the country, we run the village, and we run everything. You know what? You can complain about Israel, you can complain about America, but if you're a man and you beat your wife at home, you are the oppressor. You are the monster. Not America, not Israel, not the Jews, or not you are. And this is something which people don't want to admit, because people don't like to take responsibility for their own actions. They don't like to admit that they messed up. They don't like to admit, you know what? Maybe one time in the past we were good, but we became weak because we became lazy. Other people were outworking us. Other people had better ideas, and it's easier for us to blame other people and say we were oppressed, we were colonized, as opposed to we messed up.
Yeah, but isn't it pathetic how people go and look somewhere in history? Where did somebody come and invade our country? Then we can go and use it against them.
Yeah,
because sometime in history somebody must have invaded it.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, before you were invaded, right? You must have had some moral decay before, because if you're a good, strong nation like the Ottomans were at one point, and the Arabs, they were taking over each other. So obviously they had some sort of prowess. But why did that go away? Because you became either lazy, or you became degenerate, or your moral decay. Something went wrong somewhere.
But how can you go and demand that Spain be given back to you? Don't people remember that it is them that invaded Spain? Because Spain never invaded the Arabic Peninsula, as far as I'm aware.
Exactly. I mean, this is this is sort of brings me on to the alt-right identity politics. I don't know if you guys want to talk about that. If you don't want to talk about it, that's fine. We don't have to talk about it. I don't know if this
we'll
chat
stick over it a little bit. I'm probably in your court, Veedu. From what you're saying, we'll probably steer clear of it, because really we want to critique Islam. That's the main focus of the channel. We could have a chat. We could have a chat about that in a private hangout, because I think we're pretty closely aligned. And we've chatted once or twice a little bit about it on the show. But I want to sort of stick with
sure.
critiquing Islam.
The reason why I would only bring that up is because the identity politics has been played with black people and ethnic minorities. It's been played with white people, and it's been played by Muslims. And the common denominator with all these things are, if you can claim credit for something you didn't do. So let's say, for example, I'm a white guy. I might live in I'm just being really extreme here. I might live in some dingy house. I haven't got great career prospects, whatever it is. But I'm white, and Einstein was white. So what are you going to say about that, bruv? Like, that's my claim to racial, whatever it is. If you can claim credit for something you didn't do, you can also claim credit or claim the oppression of something you didn't go through. And that's what's happening. The Muslims, we were slaves once by these white people, so they're to blame. Or the Muslims say, we were colonized by the British, or we were X by this. But guys, you weren't. You physically are not.
Yeah,
this is what I'm saying. Take responsibility for your actions. Let's say, for example, yes, your ancestors were. Okay, are you in chains? No. So why do you have this massive chip on your shoulder, and everything you interpret through the world is through that lens or through that filter of this oppression? And I would say that, you know, the mainstream Islam has certainly adopted that way of thinking because they are in a weak position. So when you're in a weak position, the easy thing to do is to play the victim, as opposed to, you know what, we're in a weak position, we messed up, let's sort ourselves out, let's clean our you know, sort out our own affairs, as opposed to finger pointing and what sort of stuff. Muslim world was in decay before Israel was created, before America was created. We don't want to talk about that because it's much easier to say America, Britain, Israel, job done. Palestine, oh, Palestine. Yeah, Palestine as a percentage of the Muslim world, how much does it represent? Probably not even 1% or 1% maybe. I don't know. Even if Palestine was not taken over by Israelis, that would not change anything significantly intellectually in the Muslim world. There wouldn't all of a sudden be scientists now just popping out in the Muslim world because Palestine's solved. The economy wouldn't improve because this is a distraction. This is the Muslim punching bag, the intellectual punching bag which we have, which is Israel, Palestine. And whenever we get angry, oh, Palestine, Israel, oh, Palestine, Israel, or some others, oh, Kashmir, oh, this, oh, that. Guys, your own countries where you are the majority, where you are in control, they are messed up because of you, not because of anyone else.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's a case of, you know, playing the victim is a lot easier, and they're working the system because the democratic system. Yeah, we want everybody to have equal opportunity, not equal outcome. That's the big difference. And of course, some of these ideologues want an equal outcome. Hey, because of a history, you need to give me stuff now for free. No, that's not going to work. Work for it like everybody else. And if you look at, you know, various people, be it Muslims or people of other races or whatever, some people have become successful in one of the best countries in the world. If you don't like it, and that's the ironic thing, they get to speak about this in this country. Try and go and try that in one of these other countries and see how far you get. So there's the irony is not, I don't miss the irony with this as well, in one of the best countries in the world, complaining about all these things that historically happened. Yes, some of these things did happen. You know, we're today in one of the best countries, you've got all the opportunities, but instead of taking responsibility, like you said, it's easy to play the victim card. So what's happening, especially with Muslims, but as you say, it happens with these other groups as well, is taking advantage of the democracy and the openness and so forth of the West. And that's kind of a double-edged sword, because how long do you tolerate the intolerable? At some point, you get to draw a line in the sand. That's when you start to get the far right people stepping in and go, we've had enough of this now. We can see our society decaying, and this is what we're going to do. But this is because the majority of us don't speak out enough. And so, you know, it's going to be okay. If we just give them stuff, it'll all be okay. And that's never going to happen. There's never a point where they go, oh, we're all satisfied, until they dominate. And even then, you know, then they start to, as you've probably pointed out as well, then the domination just continues. So there's never a point where it's, hey, it's all okay now. Yep, we're happy. Thank you very much. We'll just get on with our lives now. No, it just never happens. So once you have that, you know, narrative in your brain, it doesn't disappear. So, but,
once you open the door, they're not going to close it for you. They will not. Once you open the door for, oh, we'll just give them some stuff, they'll be happy. Well, now you open the door, it's going to be very hard for you to close it, because they're not going to close it themselves, because they're the ones on the receiving end of a lot of benefit. So why would they close it?
No, as long as you can play the victim, I guess it suits the narrative. Hey, I'm getting stuff, I can, you know, complain, whatever the case is. But it's strange, isn't it strange that Islam is the only religion that I'm aware of where if you leave or certain things happen, you fear for your life, you get ostracized. Now that happens, I guess, to some degree with the very fundamentalist in the US. If you tell your family you're an agnostic or an atheist, you know, you get shunned or whatever the case is. But I'm not aware of any other religion where you're literally in fear of your life physically. And again, it's a small minority, so we're not saying the entire thing, but the ideology allows people to do this. And again, whenever this is talked about, it's, hey, you're painting all Muslims with a brush. And those of us that talk about it are very careful to say, no, it's not. In fact, the majority of Muslims may not think that, although we can't get into their brain. And Pew polls suggest the numbers are higher than what, you know, the general public and those people would have everybody believe. But it seems to be the only religion where, you know, you've got to be careful of what your name is or if your face is seen or whatever the case is. Like the masked Arab comes on here, it was on here. Can't tell people who he is because, you know, his life's in danger or whatever the case is. And that doesn't happen with other people. So there's something about this ideology that makes it objectively worse than others. And people just don't want to admit this or talk about it.
Yeah, absolutely. I would like to respond, but I feel bad because if someone else wants to say something, more than welcome to chip in. I feel like I've spoken so much. I feel like maybe you
are the guest. So.
I honestly am so honored and privileged. I'm going to use my privilege that I've been granted by you guys and really speak. So this is an interesting point, the whole apostasy stuff. So I remember when I was Muslim, and I obviously, you know, I'm a reasonable guy. I was like, man, it just makes sense. If someone wants to leave Islam, just let them leave Islam. Well, why am I going to go and kill them, or why am I going to threaten them? And the explanation that I got, which was actually, this is the funny thing, it's not in the Quran about killing anyone when they leave their religion. It's not, no punishment is actually mentioned. What I actually, the explanation I heard if someone left Islam was that there was a time during the, I think it was in Mecca, so when the Prophet was weak militarily, that people would join Islam because they wanted to know who also was Muslim, because their identity was hidden, and they wanted to know where they were, where were they based. Yes, I'm Muslim. They would find out some certain information, and once they knew who they were, they would say, oh, I've left Islam. They would go back to their tribe and say, this person's a Muslim, this is where they're hiding out, and that person would be in fear of retaliation or whatever. So the Prophet said, whoever leaves Islam, or whoever joins Islam and leaves Islam, they'll be killed. And in his mind, rightly or wrongly, whatever you want to call it, in his mind, that was to deter people from coming in with the intention of leaving and then selling the people's secrets or whatever it is back to their tribes. Now, isn't it ironic that he was trying to protect people who were leaving their previous religion, right? So it's the pagan religion, and they joined Islam. He was trying to protect them by having this rule. Now, this rule is used to bash people and kill people who want protection for leaving Islam. I just thought, that's amazing. It's a complete 180. And there's so many things within Islam that are like that, but people don't want to talk about it. And I was watching one Arab sheikh on the YouTube saying, if this rule hadn't been established, then many Muslims would have left Islam. So actually, it's a good thing, because you're stopping people from leaving Islam, which means they'll go to heaven. So it's like a safety mechanism.
Well, I heard that Islam wouldn't be alive and around today if it weren't for this.
Well, there you
ruling.
go. Yeah. So I mean, when I was a Muslim, I was like, guys, that's not what it means. You know, that's not the real Islam. He wasn't meant to. It was not a intellectual. It's not to punish people's intellectual choices. It was more of a security threat. But if that's the case, and that even if that is true, in practice, that is not true.
Yeah, but let's use logics again, because if you look at the claim that all Muslims, every human being is born a Muslim, that means 80% of the planet are all apostates and should be killed.
Yeah, I mean that's complete. That really irritates when people say, "Oh, everyone's born a Muslim." I'm just like, how on earth did you come to that conclusion? It's just so. And if that's the case, then why don't they naturally find Islam? Why does a prophet have to come and tell you how to live? If you're born into this state, into this fitna, which people are, oh, it's fitna, bro, it's fitna. Okay, sorry, not fitna. It's fitra. If you're born into this state, why do we have to go through so many logical proofs and so many arguments just to prove to you that you're a Muslim? If I'm a Muslim and I'm born a Muslim, I should know it. You know what I'm saying? If it's so inherent and so part of my DNA, why do so many people in the world have a problem accepting it?
Did you believe that, this fitra thing?
I didn't believe it, but I didn't disbelieve it. It was just, for me, it was like, again, I took the more metaphorical meaning, as in we all, what's what I'm trying to look for, adhere to the laws of the universe. So if God made the laws of the universe, we're all Muslim, because I can't break the law of the universe. Again, hairy-fairy ways of getting around it. But that wasn't something that I really sort of paid too much.
Self-comforting and projection.
Yes, we project our own values onto God, and we have like a personal relationship with God, like some sort of MSN friend.
Then you can say, you see, I told you so.
Hang on a moment. Veedu, maybe you can comment on this and stops as well, and maybe even TJ, if you've got knowledge on this. There seems to be, in my mind, a contradiction, and I'm open to this as a question rather than, hey, this is a contradiction, between saying that everybody's a Muslim from all time, but at the same time saying that there are certain requirements for being a Muslim. So people who are not Muslim, so prior to Muhammad coming along, for to be a Muslim, the claim that I've heard, especially at Speaker's Corner and elsewhere, is, hey, all you need to do is believe in God. But that's clearly not true, because Christians believe in God, Jews believe in God, other people believe in God. But so there must be something more. So it seems to me contradictory to say everybody's a Muslim because the only requirement is believing in God. But then actually the requirement to be a Muslim is more than just believing in God, because there's other people that do. So you've got to believe Muhammad is the last prophet and follow the 5 pillars, etc. So there seems to be a contradiction in my mind. Maybe you could speak to that.
Stops it if you want to go for it.
Or your thoughts, if you like, whichever. Do you think there is a contradiction then?
Oh, I think it's 100%. 100% contradiction.
There are more requirements than just believing in God.
100%. 100%. You've hit the nail on the head. For me, this is more like a marketing sort of schemes or salesman. Oh, listen, you're already there. You just gotta say it. It's like you already want to buy this shoe. And can you imagine yourself? You're in the shoe. You know you want to buy the shoe, so just buy it. I mean, you're already Muslim, so all you got to do is say La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah, and then that's it. You're Muslim. It is such a silly marketing sort of gimmick or whatever you want to call it. There's no credibility to it. Was true. Okay, so I can be a Muslim before there was a Muhammad. I can be a Muslim before there was Jesus. I can be a Muslim. I might not even known what Islam was. I don't even know what a Muslim is, and I'm still a Muslim. I was born a Muslim. Complete nonsense. As far as I'm concerned, there is no proof, no even if that's the case, why do I have to say Shahada?
Well, maybe Stops can speak to this, because maybe you've had some responses on the Stops if you've ever asked the question. But I guess my intuitive thought would be the reason they might come back and say, "Oh, you've got to do the Shahada," is now so that you can know it for yourself. You kind of knew it in the background, but it was subconscious. Now you're consciously making the commitment, whereas before you were always a Muslim, but you just didn't know it consciously. So the Shahada is just a conscious commitment. So they could quite plausibly, or potentially, I don't say plausibly, potentially get around that. But where they can't get around it, for me, seemingly, is people that were prior to Muhammad. How do you get around that? Because they can't say there was no Shahada at that stage. So how do you claim them to be Muslims, but at the same time say that there are certain additional requirements that they couldn't have known, didn't do, and still claim them to be Muslims? Stops, maybe you can also.
Yeah, this is handled in the Hadith, where it says that if you are below a certain age, you cannot be held responsible for what you're saying. So what is happening is that you are a Muslim by definition, but the question what a Muslim is only appears later in life. In the beginning, any person who is born as a pure human being, peaceful and innocent, is already a Muslim. This is the definition. And only then later on does it change with puberty. The same thing as with girls, they become pure, and the same thing as with boys, that they then go and glide into this thing where they go to the masjid with the father and they are introduced to the imam and things like that. Then you are considered to be a grown-up Muslim. Before you're just a child.
Okay, but there's a problem seemingly with that, Stops, just as I hear it. And again, you could probably address it because people would have responded. But because there seems then it should be that every single Muslim needs to get to a certain age and take the Shahada. Otherwise, how do you differentiate between those who take it and those who don't?
No, you don't take the Shahada as a Muslim.
No, I know you don't, but what I'm saying is you should then, given that explanation, because if that,
so you automatically do it. You automatically say the Shahada several times. I mean, if you go and pray, then this is part of the routine.
Right. Okay, so you're already doing it, even though you may not know that it's called that. You're doing a version of that. It's not exactly the same as somebody who consciously says it at Speaker's Corner, for example.
Correct.
Oh, okay. Right.
Because if you say it later, then if you are a revert, what they call it, then this is the covenant that you are then that you are entering into between this God and you.
But you were already a Muslim, so presumably, as I've said, then all you're doing is consciously entering into it, whereas you had this subconscious belief and now you're just making it overt.
Yes, you're reaffirming it.
Yeah. Okay. That still certainly doesn't seem to me, and again, I don't know if you've got an answer, that's on the Shahada part. But then, okay, so what about, so it's fine with the age thing, but how does that address people like Moses and the previous prophets and so on? What is the answer there? Is there an answer for, people prior to Muhammad who were older, who didn't have that and couldn't have done that?
I think, as far as I'm aware, they had their own I suppose, version of a Shahada. It wasn't obviously there is no God, but and Muhammad is Messenger, because obviously Muhammad wasn't there. But it was probably their own version or something similar. I'm guessing that's probably how they get around it. But yeah, but this whole idea that everyone is born a Muslim, it is just pure. I mean, it's just pure nonsense. I'm sorry. I'm trying to be as intellectual and as smart as possible, but it's just pure nonsense. I don't know what proof they have. I don't know what reason they have to say that
it's been debunked by Stops, by Essence of Thought. I've taken part of that from these guys and others. I mean, it's been not just debunked, it's been refuted. It's not the case of like, hey, there's still a chance. The good thing about this is that it's a falsifiable claim. That's the good thing about this.
They're all born Muslim.
Yeah, but this is a falsifiable claim. And so,
yeah.
And all we need is, what would it take to falsify this claim? And that is a group of people that have no belief in a God and never have in the history. Boom, we've got that. The claim is done. So wherever there's a falsifiable claim, we can step in and see whether it can be falsified. Now, of course, some of the other claims can't be falsified, or they can find ways around it. They can't find ways around it. So as far as I'm concerned, the fitra is, rest in peace, RIP on that one. It's a done deal. But even if it were the case, even the apologists that are trying to argue that, the best they can do is say there's a belief in God. I've never heard them say it's a belief in Allah. It's just a belief in a God. Now they've still got to argue that it's a belief in Allah. So that part, they don't even attempt to do. All they're trying to do is, show that there's a God, like, the cosmological argument. Then they've still got all their work ahead to show that it's Allah.
Yeah, you're right. That's actually a very good point, because let's say, for example, you do believe in a God, but you think that God can be represented in idols. Okay. That completely shatters your Abrahamic sort of God that can't be represented in any form whatsoever. Because, I mean, so many religions do believe in God, but they don't believe in Abrahamic God. They draw their God, they paint their God, they sculpt their God, or wherever it is. Now, if that's an innate belief, then why are they manifesting that in such a heretic, blasphemous way? None of it makes sense. I mean, it's one thing to say I believe in a creator. It's a completely different question to say that this creator, his name is Allah, and he has these attributes. I don't think you naturally come to that conclusion. There's nothing natural about that.
No, that has to be argued for, no doubt about it, because even with a fitra claim, they don't claim it's Allah. They, in the back of their mind, they've got it as Allah, but they don't claim it. They just say it's a God. Now, the Christians, of course, have got a tenuous link, a hugely tenuous link for all of us, which is, hey, once we get to a deistic God, then their argument is Jesus died, and that's their extremely tenuous link. I don't even see that tenuous link for Muslims. So Jesus dying, being resurrected, and saying, "Hey, I'm the Son of God," all of that for them goes, "Hey, we've gone from deist to my theist God." That's their link. Extremely tenuous, obviously, but I don't even see that with the Muslims. What is their link there? Now they've got to try and go to the Qur'an, and I can't even see yet how they can make that link.
Sorry. No, I remember hearing this from a sheikh. Yeah, reasonable educated sheikh saying that before we were born, God got all the souls of human beings. Who is your creator? And all the souls replied, "You are our creator." And he asked again, "Who's your creator?" And then he said, "This is a proof that everyone is born a Muslim and you accept Allah. And it's your fitrah." But I'm like, bro, who the hell remembers that? If it's so like again, why is it coincidentally no one remembers God asking us before we were born, who's your creator? This is what is this your proof that this is the link between believing there's a creator and believing Allah is the creator, that before we were born we were asked this question by God and we all accepted that he was a creator? Go figure.
Yeah, I mean, you could make up any sentence,
Exactly.
You need to verify it. And at least, and I'm saying at least, still with huge quotation marks, at least the Christians' claim is that, hey, this Jesus died, etc. And, there's the scientific historians seem to suggest that, the majority of historians think that a person by the name of Jesus kind of existed. I'm okay with all of that. Obviously, what I'm not okay with is the supernatural claims. At least we've got something in the ballpark there. But with the Muslims, it's like, okay, I'm just going to make something up that Muhammad said this. Allah said this to all the souls. Well, how do we know? Nobody was there. So you're just making up a story now to fill the gap here, to answer the question. I mean, if this is not
I agree.
filling in stuff, I don't know what is.
I 100% agree on that.
Veedu, did you, when like a few years ago, did you actually think Muhammad was a real person?
Is he not? This is news to me.
I'm
As in,
asking.
human being. When you say real person, like we're not talking about like a mythical creature, like a real human being. I'm
Like
not
a
sure.
real human being, a real physical flesh and bones human being that really existed.
Did I believe that? Yeah. Sorry, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I still believe he as a human being existed. The same way, I don't know, Napoleon existed or some other historical figure, Julius Caesar existed.
Okay, that's all I wanted to know, because I was curious whether you do or not, because actually there's no evidence that he did. The same with Jesus, but yeah.
No, stops. I mean, the Christians argue, and so do apparently other scholars, even Bart Ehrman, who's not a thing that, certainly not with Muhammad, obviously, but with Jesus. The majority of scholars suggest that, a person called Jesus existed. Now, whether he did everything in the Bible, that's obviously hugely controversial, but there was somebody that was called Jesus. So, I mean, are you not prepared to take the consensus of the historians?
No, they don't. They lie. Because they are saying that all these historians mention Jesus, but when you go and you check, they don't. Same
Okay,
thing
so
with Muhammad. There's a lot of people that say, well, Muhammad is mentioned here and there and there. If you go and look, actually, no.
See, that's very interesting because on the one hand, assuming what you say is true, he didn't exist. Okay.
No. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying there is no evidence that he physically existed.
Right. Oh, I see what you're saying.
So I guess it depends what you mean by evidence then. So obviously you don't take any of the sayings or any of the passed down information or supposedly historical claims.
You're talking about like, a contemporary reference, right?
No, I am talking about any kind of falsifiable, verifiable, whatever claim or evidence or anything that would indicate whether a person existed. Now, if
what would that be for you, though, Stops?
Okay, if I look at, for example, if I look at Napoleon, then we have documentation written by Napoleon. We have people who met Napoleon, who wrote about him. We have people who hated Napoleon, who were defeated by Napoleon, who fought with Napoleon, against Napoleon, and everybody talked about it, wrote about it. They drew about it. They did this and this and this. So we have a very clear picture of who Napoleon was. Now, we know, for example, that this claim that he was a short ass or something is actually not true, that he was actually quite tall. So we know a lot of these things, which is knowledge, all right, which is actually, we have corroborating evidence, and this is what is important for me, where we don't have any of that for Jesus, for example. Because people always tell me, yeah, but Pliny and Africanus and if you look what they are saying, they don't even mention Jesus. Even them, the two major guys, Tacitus and Josephus. If you go to Josephus, and I've done this, I've counted 69 different Jesuses that Josephus mentions. None of these, except for the so-called TF, the Testimonium Flavianum, mentioned the Jesus that we're looking for. And that we know, and if you look at it, if you look at the flow of the text, is 100% a fake. If we go to the second one, Tacitus, well, he talks about Christians and some Christ who was, martyred at the cross. So this is an insertion where we know it was inserted because other people don't talk about this when they quote this exact type text, but they don't mention this. So we know it was probably Eusebius inserted this at a later date, because suddenly in the year 600, I've done a video on this showing the chronology and blah, 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 where everything was mentioned, who mentioned what, where, when, how, and didn't mention this. So for Jesus, I went quite deep into this to see what was fact and what was not. With Muhammad, I went in, well, almost as deep, and I looked at all the sources that people say, and the Jacobi doctrine and the Armenian and all these places, and I saw, nope, nobody mentions Muhammad.
That's really interesting, because assuming that's true, because a lot of people say that Muhammad killed certain Jewish tribes or whatever, so then those Jewish tribes didn't get killed, or?
Well, the question is, did they really exist? And this is the question. If these tribes existed and were wiped out, how did this happen? Because, okay, look at it this way. Jesus, for example, is supposedly from Nazareth, but for some reason he's from Bethlehem. Or from Jerusalem or whatever, but never from Nazareth. If you go and look at Nazareth, you see it didn't even exist at the time. So what the people did 300 years later, they said, well, let's pick a tiny town where nobody knows how to look for it, that we don't care that it doesn't have the cliff where apparently somebody was thrown off or was threatened to be thrown off, that they didn't look at the details. And they said, well, let's pick a tiny town. The same thing happened with Mecca, because it's 100% clear that there was no Muhammad in Mecca. That is 100% sure.
Really?
Yeah.
I have no idea.
How did they pick this Mecca? And then the funny thing is, if you look at maps, Mecca was not mentioned. It was not on the trade routes. It was nowhere to be seen. And suddenly, like in the 7th century, Mecca appeared. So we have all these battles, but we have no evidence of these battles. We look at all the different sentences in the Quran, but they are describing a place which is totally different. We look at the original mosque, they are pointing to a place which is definitely not Jerusalem and definitely not Mecca. So the whole thing, this whole spiel with Mecca and Muhammad is concocted. To what extent, and here I'm joining forces with Rob again, that there was some guy called Jesus who was a charismatic preacher, or there was a guy called maybe even Muhammad who was a charismatic warlord or something. This is possible. And that they then went and placed the God package on Jesus and gave the prophet package to Muhammad, that is possible. So that is an explanation. Like, for example, the mosque. You know the night journey where Muhammad got on his burak, flew to Jerusalem, and it says he fasted it outside, went inside and prayed. But this mosque was only built 100 years after Muhammad. But the people didn't realize that. So there's a lot of small little things that sort of give you the impression that this was actually an invented figure much later, placed on top of a guy who actually existed.
That's amazing. You know, when there's moments in life where your mind is blown.
And this is why I asked you whether you thought that, because the only thing we have are the hadiths, which 99% are fabricated. We don't know where they come from. We only have the seerah. And is it easy to fabricate? Absolutely. Because we don't have Ishaq, we only have Hisham. If Hisham says, well, I copied it from Ishaq, well, he can mention that. But did he really do that? We don't know. So, you know, there's a lot of things flowing into the other here. So the corroborating evidence definitely is not.
Is it, I mean, I don't know if anyone else wants to jump in before I talk whatever. Hello?
You carry on there, buddy. You are the guest, so share your views on what you just heard.
So, are you guys, I'm sure you must be familiar with Jordan Peterson?
Yeah.
Who?
Jordan
Peterson, the professor from Canada.
Okay, I am not.
Okay. Check him out. He's definitely interesting. Me, as someone who's agnostic and doesn't really believe in God, whatever, he's a Christian, and I find his work genuinely amazing. With it, but for me, it's really, really interesting. So he said, for example, you know, like mythological archetypes. And he said, like, for example, let's say you've got someone in your village. Let's say you're thousands of years old, whatever. I'm sorry, you're from thousands of years ago, and you're in a village, and there's some guy in your village who's like some amazing guy. Look at the town, and he's like amazing. He would, in your village context, would be like a hero. Now, let's say, for example, Rob's from another village, and he's got the same kind of his own version of that guy, and that's his hero. And I've got my version. Over time, those different people would combine or amalgamate into a hero that's a combination of all those different characteristics. And if that will keep happening over time, someone like a Jesus, where there could be 10 or 15 of them, but over time, and they didn't have the concept of history the same way we have like recording stuff. This, like they didn't have the concept of fact. They have the concept of truths, rather than is it technically empirically true. It was easier for them to amalgamate and all these different characteristics from all these different quote unquote heroes from their villages or towns or where it was, and make him into one superhero. I said, this is Jesus Christ, he did all these amazing things. Or Muhammad, oh yeah, he was a warlord, but he was peaceful. He had this, he had that, and make him like, I'm guessing in Arabia, in a tough environment, the qualities he exhibited were probably what was required. I'm not saying it's moral, but you need to be tough. You need to be you need to be a statesman. You got to be good with the women. You have 15 women. You control them. Then you have good companions. You got to be able to do all sorts of stuff. So if you imagine, because taking the morality out of it, if Muhammad did exist in the way we say that Muslims say he did, he achieved quite a lot for a illiterate Arab guy who's then his religion is like a fifth or more than that. He did pretty well. But what you're saying is it's probably more realistic that there's probably maybe 10 or 15 of these guys, and their stories were amalgamated and combined into this myth who was Muhammad, and he did this and he did that. The same way with Jesus. It's like you said, there's like 15 or 40 of these guys who are very similar to Jesus. If you were to combine all their stories together and their miracles and all their achievements, then that would be like the superhero. Does that make any sense, or am I just...
No, that's exactly the case. That's exactly what I'm saying. Yeah.
Wow. That's what Jordan Peterson has said with whether it's prophets or whether it's hero or sort of these Greek gods or whatever. There probably was 15, 20, 100, 200 of these guys, and over time they just sort of combine them together, and then it becomes this one figure who did all these things, and that's like amazing.
Well, Jesus, it's very easy, because if you look at the God package in those days, walking on water, raising the dead, healing the blind, I mean, that was a very popular thing in those days. I mean, there was this Apollonius, he did exactly the same things, except he could also walk through walls. So, there were a lot of people, and if you look in history, born of a virgin and blah, blah, and you look at all these different facts, that it was just very popular in those days as a god. So he's given, the same characteristics and parameters as a god would in those days, and that's it.
That's amazing. Can I say my mind is blown? Seriously, my mind is blown right now. I didn't even think of it like that.
Watch this video. I'll post it in the main chat as well. Watch this video. This is like a history of Yahweh and how it came to be and stuff. So watch that video. I saw this some years ago, if you haven't seen it, about how Yahweh developed as a conquering God. They had all the other gods and they slowly amalgamated them together. But we've done that all up. And it's the thing of like, we're looking for the superhuman abilities. I personally prefer the comic books, the Marvel and the DC comics. At least they're relatable in some way, and they have real world problems and stuff to overcome and all that sort of stuff. Far more entertaining. But even the Greek mythology, that was entertaining. I used to read those stories. They were fascinating stories. I mean, the Abrahamic things are boring.
And there's actually in the archives of the Jinn&Tonic show, there is a show where I spend an entire 2 hours going through each text, through each source, verifying it, looking what it actually says, and then looking at where it belongs, where it was written, when it was written, and so on and so forth.
Okay, maybe we can find that at some point.
So it's not just me making this up or something. I really looked into this.
No, that's
guys,
cool.
Sorry, can I just make one more point? I don't know if you guys want to go or whatever. I don't know about.
Not in a particular hurry, so no. If it's interesting like it is, we can carry on for a while. It's when we get to a point where there's nothing else to say or we're bored or whatever the case is. So yeah, carry on.
We're losing you there. I really encourage you, if you haven't watched some of Jordan's lectures, his series, and what at the beginning. Sorry?
No, carry on.
So I think I was saying right at the beginning. TJ might have missed this, but sorry. much interested in finding the quote unquote deeper meaning of the Quran. So like not the literal whatever kind of meaning, but the more deeper, meaningful, profound, whatever kind of meaning. And I still have genuinely, I still have that inquisitiveness as because these texts, like we were saying before, if there were like 20 Jesuses, at the end of the day, we now only know one, or the vast majority of human beings only know one, and they accept him as Jesus. And same with Muhammad, and same with the other prophets and Moses, and so on and so forth. There's something within their character or within their story that must have stuck. If we look at it from a completely free market economics point of view, the strongest company survives, but in this case, the strongest idea or the strongest character survives. So what is it within their character that has survived? The same way there are many religious books across the world, hundreds of thousands that probably existed, but there's like 3 main ones or 5 main ones. What is it about these books that have survived? So there must be something inherently within these books that resonates with the vast majority of the human population. Otherwise, they would have died out. I mean, no one knows the book that's kind of like Harry Potter, but isn't. They know Harry Potter. There's many books about wizardry and witches, but we know Harry Potter because that's the best one. The same way, I am genuinely interested in learning about these religions, not only from a point of view to prove they're incorrect, in the sense factually incorrect, but in a more positive light in saying, well, what can we glean from these books that tells us about our human nature? Not in the Prophet Muhammad's the perfect human being, or Jesus is the perfect human being, but it's like a footprint of our humanity, the intellectual journey or the evolution of our societies and history. It's a glimpse into that. And I think if we were to take a step back and say, okay, fine, you want to believe in God, you don't want to believe in God, don't really care. Great. Let's read these books the same way we read, like Rob was saying, Marvel or DC. I think even as skeptics, atheists, agnostics, we can learn a lot. And I genuinely, like when you were saying, oh, Muhammad, there's like 10 of them, and they're like, but I find that mind-blowing, and now my mind is on fire. I'm like, wow, that is...
But hang on, look at the Quran. Do you know the single letter sentences?
The Alif Lam Mim stuff.
Exactly, yeah. Those with 2, 3,
yeah.
4, even 5 letters. What do you think they are?
Yeah. I don't know.
Okay.
Neither does anybody else.
Well, my theory is that they are actually the initials of the authors.
Wow. That's wow. Again, that's a plausible theory. Who knows? They're leaving sort of a breadcrumb trail saying, you know, give me the credit.
So what happened is that the people were signing their own stuff, but then the copiers didn't realize this, and they just put it back into the Quran because they thought it was part of the Quran.
It's amazing. See, again, something like that as well. That for me is, forget the religiosity, forget the moral. That is amazing. If that is true, or it's a very interesting theory as to hard, because not the Quran is at times very beautiful, melodic. At times, it's kind of doesn't really have a flow. It doesn't really have the same structure. I don't know. It could be written by maybe.
Sounds man author, doesn't it?
So, yeah.
But
Some parts are very nice and easy.
Exactly.
Sorry, go on.
You were talking earlier about looking into it, and I was listening to "In the Shadow of the Sword" by Tom Holland, and he was talking about, and I cannot remember the Muslim kind of warlord's name, or Arab warlord, I think it was at the time. He invoked Muhammad. I cannot remember his name. I was listening to the part where he was talking about this. There's a long build up to get to the part. This book is huge. I'm listening to the audio version. Tom Holland spent 5 years. He was on the show some years ago with Stops, so Stops will know it even better. But there's a point where there was no or very little Islam or whatever the case is going on, and then this particular, because there were internal battles going on and so forth, and this particular guy almost like resurrected Islam in a sense and made it the dominant religion, and made it follow Muhammad and all this sort of stuff, and that's what sort of got it going. There was some period in between Muhammad's supposed death and this guy resurrecting. I can't remember his name, but he talks about this in depth about how this guy used that to secure his hold.
I didn't.
You're breaking up there. Try that again.
Breaking up.
No, I've lost you.
Like Muawiyah.
Stops. Can you hear? I've gone.
No.
Video is just video. You've dropped there. We can't hear you. You're still on the connection, but you've almost like you muted yourself.
I can hear single syllables at times.
Yep, I can hear you now. Sorry.
Oh, there you go. Sorry, try again. We've missed whatever you said after I
Hello?
talked about this shadow of the sword. Yeah, there you go. Try again now. No, we've lost you. We're not hearing you at all now.
Hear me?
Can you go and reconnect?
Can you hear me?
Now, can you hear me? We heard.
I've heard the words, "Can you hear me?" I heard the words, "Can you hear me?" But I've heard nothing prior to that.
Hi, I'm speaking, testing 1, 2, 3. Can you?
Yes, there we go.
Testing part, yes.
Okay.
The rest, when you're actually saying something, no.
Okay, try again now.
Hear me now?
Just say what I can hear it when you say, "Can you hear me now?" Yes, I can hear you now. So just sort of respond. I think you were going to respond to what I was talking about with the Shadow of the Sword book. So go ahead. No, we're not hearing you now. If you are saying something,
Oh, I just connected. Yeah. Okay, try
yeah,
again.
he's reconnecting. So just jump off with the other connection then. So whichever one, disconnect the one that isn't working.
Hello?
Yep, we can hear you there.
Yep, cool. Now I can hear you. Sorry about
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Go on. Go on. You were
Cool.
going to respond to what I was
Shadow
talking
Sword.
about in the history book there.
that. So you were just saying about the sword, Tom Holland's book.
Yes. Yeah. So did you hear what I talked about with that? With how it was kind of
No,
seemed to-
all I heard was that there was some warlord, and that's it.
Oh, okay. So Tom Holland was talking about this, and again, Stops will give more accurate information. In fact, Stops, if you know the specifics there, because I only listened to it the other day, so if you know the specifics about how it kind of was resurrected and who that guy was, maybe you could sort of chime in here. Have you got more of the details there?
No. This was my speculation that it could have been Muawiyah.
Oh, no. So, well, I'm referring to Tom Holland's book, and in the book, he's talking about from a historical point of view how there was sort of no Islam for a period of time after Muhammad's death, and then there was this sort of Arab warlord that was battling with other Arab warlords. And again, he's got all the names in the book, and he kind of resurrected, Islam, for want of a better word, called it Islam, and said Muhammad was the prophet, and enforced that, and that sort of was a sort of a stronger foundational point from which he would start to dominate the Arabian Peninsula. And so kind of that's my understanding of what
Okay,
Tom
I've
Holland
got the
was
book
talking
here.
about.
Do you remember the name?
It starts with an A, Abu Ali, something like that.
But not Abdul Malik.
No. Somebody else he talks about this. So it was just in response to what you were saying, Veedu, about looking back in history to go, okay, how did this come about? Because the assumption is by all Muslims is that this book was, essentially unbroken from the time Muhammad got the revelations until today. And, Tom Holland and a few others are going, hang on a moment. There's a significant period where this wasn't happening, and there's a lot of other things going on. And, I tend to take that seriously. I tend to be more cautious of, quote, Islamic scholars, because they're not there to falsify it or to really see whether it's true. What they're there to do, seemingly from my point of view, or what I can see, is to confirm things or to explain things, but not to go, hey, did this actually happen the way it was said? So I'm much more cautious of the Islamic scholars or history. I want independent people who can look at this, who don't have a bias one way or the other.
No, I can't find it. I'm sorry. Nothing jumps out at me.
I mean,
Okay.
Again, this is for me. I'm hearing this for the first time, so I'm. My mind is incredibly stimulated, and I now all these thoughts are going through my mind, saying because obviously I was brought up as a Muslim, and this was like the Prophet said this, Prophet said that, his companions. So are these companions real? I mean, surely, for example, again, I'm just playing devil's advocate or trying to understand in my mind. When the Caliphs, for example, Umar, when he went to Iran or Persia, back to whatever, and he made the Muslim. I was reading in Karen Armstrong's book that he made the Muslim, and this is why they hold a resentment against Umar, because they were Zoroastrian before that, and they vent their anger against Umar and all sorts of stuff. But I'm thinking, if Muhammad's not real, then was real, then what about Hassan Hussein and the Karbala incident and all? So for me now, you've opened up a can of worms, and I'm just sort of trying to think like, fine, even if you assume for argument's sake Muhammad's not real, then what about everyone else that was related to him or came after him, whether his companions or his nephews or whatever it was that was killed in Karbala, so on and so forth? How does that work out then?
Yes, this is the problem. How do you get now the transition between what is fabricated and what is real? This is the problem. This is the same thing that I have as well, because Amr obviously existed, okay? But where and how and in what capacity and in what strength and things like that, those things we don't know, because the people sort of made this into an interwoven carpet-like pattern where everything sort of fits in, but it doesn't make sense. So, there's a lot of things in the Quran, for example, where it says when they passed the salt pillar and blah, blah, blah. You don't find this in Mecca. There is no way that you can do any of this where the valley next to the spring is in Mecca. Mecca doesn't have this. So how do you know where this all took place? It must be further north. It must be in the Fertile Crescent. It must be somewhere near a huge lake or something. So how do you actually make sense of this? How do you know what is a fact and what is fabricated? This is exactly the point. And it's fascinating to go through these things.
So then what's your opinion on the whole Karbala situation?
How do you mean?
Like, did it happen?
No, this I don't know.
I mean, regardless of whether you think it's more, forget the morality of it. Do you think there was a situation where Yazid? Okay, so this is interesting. At what point does the fiction become fact? So, for example,
this is exactly what I'm trying to say. You can't. This is exactly the big problem that I have for myself. Where is the cutoff? Where do you start trusting the sources, and where do you say, nah, this is completely fabricated? So there are things where I know, okay, this is true because there's corroborating evidence, and there are things which are definitely not. Now, where's the cutoff? Where is the fine line where the two are interwoven, and you get some things which are true, which are exaggerated, and some things which are like totally fictitious? I do not know. So there's a lot of things that I really don't know.
Wow. I'm gonna have to think about this one, because I'm really, this is the first time I'm hearing it. I mean, I was aware of Jesus being more of a mythological creature because that was 2,000 years ago, but I have heard even critics of Islam say that Islam was the religion that was closer to recorded history. So we have more of an idea about who Muhammad was as a person rather than Jesus. So that was what I, even from a non-Muslim point of view, understood. But I didn't hear anyone go that far to say he wasn't even Muhammad. He was like a amalgamation of people or whatever, a concoction of a warlord or whatever it was.
Well, it took me several years to get there. I also had the same thing where I thought, okay, that these things, there must be some basis for this, until I threw everything out and I started from scratch. And that's when I realized there's nothing there.
Wow. That's amazing. And on that point, can I mention another point?
Sure.
Which I found even more amazing. And this was again by Tom Holland. He was I can't remember which book it was in, but he was speaking about his book in a some sort of event or whatever it was. And you might know this, but it's about Aisha and her age. Are you familiar with this?
Oh, there's so many.
So his thing was, I believe he thinks Muhammad is real, otherwise he wouldn't have said this. But he said that, for example, Aisha wasn't 6 and 9. She was much older. And in fact, the Shias 6 and 9, and they have their reasons. And it's interesting. And those reasons are the reasons why. Okay, I'm just going around in circles. So, as you know, the Shias are not fond of Aisha for several reasons.
Yeah.
And the Sunnis are. I'm simplifying it because there's no point in complicating it. For various reasons. Now, Bukhari, who is the main hadith collector, was a Sunni. And he's collecting these hadiths about Aisha and the Prophet and so on and so forth. Again, this is the mainstream narrative, right? He's a Sunni. He wants to portray Aisha in the best way. So what of countering the narrative by the Shias that Aisha was lewd, or she had like some sort of affair. Do you know that about she had some sort of affair with some the Prophet wasn't happy about it, and he didn't speak to her for like a month, and blah blah blah. So the Shia say, "Oh look, man, she's not really that religious." Sunni's like, "No, she is. It's all made up, whatever." Anyway, Bukhari, knowing that and collecting these hadiths, this is what Tom Holland said: reduced the age of Aisha, so his audience in his time. Let's say, for example, I'm a girl, right? Okay, this is disgusting, but whatever. Central point. A girl's 6 years old. This girl will get married to this man when she becomes a woman, i.e., puberty. Even though that's not really a woman, it's just literally the first part. But anyway, and she gets married at age 9. And does she have any chance of being with any other guy? No. She's got no boyfriend. She was a girl playing with dolls, as they say. And the moment she could potentially be considered a woman, she was with the Prophet. So basically what the Sunni or what the Bukhari was saying was she could be cheating on him because her whole upbringing and character was developed by this perfect man who we say is the Prophet. And that is a dig or a slight refutation to the Shias. And the people in that time reading Bukhari or listening to Bukhari knew what he meant, in the sense, no, she's not actually 9 years old. But they knew what they were saying was, yes, Aisha's cool. She's not cheating on the Prophet. She hasn't. No. She was actually older, meaning they're leaving a window open for her to be promiscuous or whatever it is. 100 years. You have people who actually believe she was 9 and 6. When I heard that, I was like, wow. And that was one of those moments. I was like, bloody hell. How did Bukhari, whatever you think of the man, if he was real, if he did connect with these, if the Prophet did exist, if that is the case, how did he know that his hadith would make it 1400 years in the future, where someone can type into Google, Aisha 9 years old, yes, she's 9 years old? Do you see that? My mind was like, I'm like, when I hear that, when I told my father this, who obviously is open-minded, and he doesn't believe Aisha was 9 years old either. But I would say because he's a moral guy and he doesn't like the idea of his Prophet being with a 9-year-old. When he heard this, he was like, well, that makes sense. Prophet wouldn't do that. I was like, it does. If it makes sense, it's not because the Prophet wouldn't do it. It's because Bukhari had his own agenda.
But you're not asking for a rational explanation now, are you?
Sorry?
You're not asking for a rational explanation.
Oh, that would be too much. That would be unfortunate. but I mean, what are your thoughts on this? When I heard this, my mind was blown. I was like, all this time, we're like, no, she's 9. No, she's 10. No, she's this age. No, it's. Oh, but you know, okay, this other point. Now, okay, you know what? It's bad. Assume, for argument's sake, the Prophet slept with a 9-year-old, or a man 1400 years ago slept with a 9-year-old. That's terrible. It's disgusting. It's wrong on every level. Great, we're in agreement. That's bad. But what is worse is that the people who either admire him or follow him create a whole narrative saying it's okay that women went through puberty earlier, that people at the time and this and that, and created a whole narrative to justify this when potentially it did not happen. And now that narrative has real life consequences where women, or girls, not women, girls are getting married off at 9, 10 years old, but because the Prophet did it. So if the Prophet did it, can't I do it? When in theory, it might not have even happened.
Yeah.
Say something about that.
No.
What the hell do I do now?
I only nod in agreement. Can't you hear me nodding?
I can't hear you. I can't hear you. You're not nodding loud enough, mate.
So going on video, I mean, Veedu, I should say. Veedu, there we go. What would you say is the sort of the hardest thing that do people respond to your videos and like challenge you as an ex-Muslim, or do they just find it funny? And that's what sort of responses do you typically get to your videos?
So I get a variety of responses. Some people, like you said, just watch it. Haha, that's funny. Look at this guy doing the Zakir-Naik impression, and that's the end of that. I think it resonates with them. I have one. I remember I made this video on the Dajjal, you know, the Antichrist. He's going to come back in these. I've probably had these. The Antichrist. He's going to be this short. He's going to have one eye. He's going to be very muscular. He's going to have Arabic on his forehead written Kafir, but only the Muslims can read it. And I actually did a physical description of that where I put myself in. I had an eye patch. I had a Kafir on my forehead written. I was like 4'2". I was on my knees. That's what he's going to say. I'm Jesus, right? And we'll be like, oh yeah, obviously you're Jesus. Anyway, saying when you make it real for me, in a sense, when you show it to me, I realize how stupid it is. My job, as much as I make fun of certain things in Islam, I don't want to misconstrue it, because the argument they're going to say is, well, that's not what Islam is. I'm trying to make Islam what it isn't. I'm trying to make Islam what it is and say, is this what you really believe? Are you seriously telling me this is what's going to happen? And then a lot of the time, people get in defensive and say, "Oh, but you know, you're like, just hurl insults." But a lot of the time, people say, "I used to believe this stuff, but now I don't." I had one guy, a Hindu, message me on Facebook and say, "I was really into this Muslim girl. She's really cool. I was thinking of converting, but I watched your videos, and now I'm definitely not going to become Muslim."
Oh, my word.
I don't know what video he watched or how fit this girl. I don't know anything about that. But apparently, this guy who was considering becoming Muslim, which I'm not going to say is a bad thing. I'm not going to say it's a good thing. Whatever, it's his choice. Be real. If it makes you happy, great. But whatever it was in my videos, it made him realize maybe this isn't the right thing to do. And I've heard a lot of people at Facebook, YouTube saying, "Veedu, I wish I could even share your video on Facebook. I wish I could comment on it, but I can't, because if someone sees me comment on your video saying, haha, very funny, they'll be like, why are you saying it's funny? Why are you doing X, Y, and Z?" So I would say the majority of the people that comment are positive, even by Muslims, closeted ex-Muslims or atheists or skeptics, whatever. The vast majority of people say it's all good, you know, it's fine, it's funny. Very few people actually troll me, and that's possibly one of the reasons why, is because I'm not that big yet. So I'm again, a very small group of people who actually know me. But maybe if I like, I don't know, 1 million followers, then maybe the percentage of negative comments would, I'm sure they would. But honestly, I was surprised at how positive people were to my videos. Genuinely, I thought there'll be like 10% of people who say, "Oh, it's really funny," but most of the videos would have more dislikes than likes. I really thought that, because I thought a Muslim thing doesn't exist in the world, maybe for a good reason, because people don't like it. But it does exist, but people do like it, and there's a massive gap in the market for it.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it sounds like, and other people have said the same, there's a lot more people who are skeptical, who are potentially closet non-believers or whatever the case is, or, you know, hopefully, you know, hopeful ex-Muslims, and they're unable to say it for restrictions in their countries or their family or their community. And so they look online, they've got access to the internet, and they come across somebody like you, and they go, "Oh, you know, this is the kind of thing I wish I could say and do." And so some people maybe not live their life, but they have those vicarious moments through you, wishing they could do this or say this or whatever the case is, but they're not able to. So I think you definitely fill a gap there that I think is very valuable for those sort of things, because they can't necessarily change for, you know, probably very serious reasons. Yep. And so if you can bring a little light to their life, in a sense, then, you know, that's a step in the right direction. I've had many mentors in my life, and one of them said to me at one point, you know, our job is not necessarily to cure the world in a single step, but if somebody takes a small step, then you've done something in that person's life. Now, you would, maybe your videos, you'll never know, somebody will, but that's the thing, and that's the thing that I think is powerful, is getting those responses, because hopefully that gives you the momentum to do it as well, of, you know, people responding, "Hey, I love this. Hey, I wish I could say something, I can't for X, Y, and Z reasons," and, you know, you can sympathize with that, and that I think is powerful, because the internet, I think, is the enemy of Islam or religion in general. There's information to be found. People are becoming more awake. They're looking for things, and, you know, they can't keep it down forever. And I think, you know, this is the catalyst, the turning point, I believe and hope, would be the internet, especially in you know, the majority Muslim countries, where they're not able to have the sort of free speech and so forth that we have here.
Oh, thank you so much. I really appreciate that. This is 100% right. Even if you can make one step, incremental step, we're heading in the right direction. 100% agree. I really do agree with that.
Yeah, and I think we on the show here do believe that Islam does not stand up to critical evaluation in any sense. And so that's the big thing. And the more we can get that message out in whichever way, you're doing it through fun. And I think that, for the hardliners, maybe they might dislike you more, but the moderates would probably like you a lot more than, say, myself or Stops, for example. So I think there's a place for everybody in getting a message out there and being critical in whatever way, that is.
I think that's a very interesting point you just made there, that my type of content is more geared towards the moderates. Because the hardliners, they're not going to engage with you. When the moment you start ridiculing, they're not going to do it. It's like a thin-skinned dictator. The moment you start making fun of him, then that's it. They're going to what's the word I'm looking for? Retaliate or shut you down or whatever it is. But those moderate Muslims, they're willing to give it a try, and that's what I found out. That my criteria was, if I can make my family laugh, because I know they're good people. Ballpark. If they're like, Waleed, that's too much, then I know I've gone a bit over the top. So that's the sort of my barometer.
So they're your benchmark. Okay, no, that's
exactly my benchmark. That's what I'm looking for. Yeah.
Yep. And I guess what I haven't seen, because I haven't watched every single one of your videos, but what I haven't seen is let's put it this way, satirized Muhammad himself, or is it more other people or the Qur'an, or what is this, generally speaking, the subject matter of your satire?
My satire, Muhammad is off limits for obvious reasons. I mean, forget my security. Even if I was like, heavily guarded, forget that. For the pure intellectual reason, the moment you go there, unfortunately, this is so badly brainwashed in the mind that he's a perfect human being and he's this and he's. The moment you go there, moderate Muslims will just forget radicals. Moderate Muslims will just turn off. So you might have the funniest joke at the end of the video. You might have like an amazing message, but they're not going to even get there. They're not even going to be in a position to accept it or even entertain it, because you've destroyed what is the most sacred figure in their life. So for me, forget the security. Practically, it doesn't work. It does not work. But if I make fun of someone like a Zakir-Naik, who's not a prophet, or to most people he's not, or Dawah Man, or Abu Halima, or Mehdi Hassan, or whatever it is, or Maj Nawaz, those people are contemporary people, and we accept them to not be perfect human beings, even though some people have a problem with that, but people are more forgiving. So from a purely strategic point of view, it makes no sense for me to go after Muhammad. But I will flirt with the Quran. So one of my latest videos is verses you're not going to read in the Quran. In that show, Mock the Week, they did this segment called Things You Won't Hear in the Bible. So it's like they come up with silly verses that you won't hear in the Bible. So I said, well, what if we did one with the Quran? And mine's like, and kiss them wherever you may find them, and the same way, and kill them. I just obviously mess with the verses a bit. That's probably the closest I've come to a direct, quote unquote, assault on the Quran. But again, I'm very wary. I'm not going to go that far, because again, you're poking a bear, and you don't know how that bear is going to react. It could swipe your face off.
Yeah, I agree with you in a sense, and disagree in another sense. But I think people's personal safety does come first. So from that point of view, I think that one does need to be wary, given, you may not know sort of some of the people that we often interact with here, and some of the people that have been in Speaker's Corner. There's been, threats against people that have been in Speaker's Corner, etc. I've had one threat. Stops has had zillions. So, you kind of get with it. But I do think yourself and others in sort of your environment, your personal safety does come first. But on the other hand, allowing that narrative not to be challenged just enforce the belief of those people that they're correct. And it stops everybody else from doing it as well. If nobody does it, you remember when the cartoons happened, or when the Charlie Hebdo, massacre happened, the US media would not show the cartoons that Charlie Hebdo had published that got some of those journalists killed in that massacre. and they were quite rightly called out, in my view, for not doing so. Now, as I say, yourself and other ex-Muslims are in a different case, and that's understandable from your personal safety. But other people don't speak out, and then it becomes this thing of, oh, he's untouchable, we can't speak about him. And I think that is wrong. And for myself, I don't go out there necessarily saying he's a pedophile or a slave driver or whatever the case is. But if somebody asks me, I will say that. There's no doubt, because for me, that's what I believe about that. But not to say that and to tiptoe around this, it just starts to enforce it, and it never stops. And so at some point, some people have got to be brave enough, and I don't expect you to do it, but I think that would be the other side of the argument. So maybe you can give your thought.
Well, I 100% agree with you on the Charlie Hebdo stuff. I think people have been killed for drawing cartoons, yet you're not going to show the cartoons because that might be more offensive than the killing. That's for me, just, sort of such a low, pathetic argument. Really is. So I was completely in favor of them printing the cartoons. But what I think, this is, I 100% agree with what you just said. I really do. And this has made me evaluate my own strategy going forward. I'm more than open to advice and suggestions. But what I was coming from was the freedom of speech you get in France or the UK is not going to be the same as the freedom of speech you get in Pakistan or, I don't know, Egypt, right? It'll be of a much lower quality, and the scope of conversation will be much narrower. So if I or someone like me were to do mocking the Quran openly, even if it is true, it will go over their head so much that, like I said, the question won't be, oh, he's making a very good point. The question will be, he's insulted us, and we can and we will kill him, and we have a right to. But even if you take away these security stuff, forget that for now. Intellectually, I almost feel bad saying this, but are they even at an intellectual stage where they can understand satire? On the religious satire, maybe like political stuff. I watch Pakistani news quite a lot because my parents watch it, and they rinse each other's, like the different politicians all the time, satirizing them. But they're not at that level where they can satirize a religious figure or a religious book. As a civilization, as a culture, they haven't evolved at that point, detach themselves and separate ideas from human beings. They haven't got there. So if I'm speaking to them, and I'm speaking a language or a type of language that is more advanced or developed, they're just not going to get it. And I agree with you that we should call it out and stop this sort of Voldemort effect that imagine the one, oh, we can't talk about it, we should and we can. But I suppose for me, in this journey, in this very early journey, I'm sort of taking baby steps. And maybe I would have developed the courage to say it, and maybe my followers will have the stomach to accept it when I say it, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and I think that's the main thing. So this is never a point in your direction, because as you say, you're sort of starting out, and you have certain legitimate concerns around doing so. I think just the narrative in general, I guess, is what I'm pointing towards. And again, it depends who your audience is. If the audience is, am I going to try and convince, for want of a better word, the lower level, lower consciousness people in Pakistan? And again, this is not everybody. No, you're not going to be able to convince those people. As you say, they haven't even got to the level where they can accept or even understand what satire is, never mind taking it to satire with a profit. But generally speaking, especially in the West, I don't think we should be scared of doing anything in the West, but but this is a problem, isn't it? And the only way to get to a point where this is no longer a problem is to speak out about this. But it starts with those baby steps in whatever sense that is. But at some point, there's, imagine there was a Broadway show in the West End, like the one with the Jesus, where I can't remember what it was called, but there was
the Book of Mormon.
Yes, the Book of Mormon. Now imagine there was a book of the Quran, and Muhammad is featured in there, and he was made fun of, etc. They would literally have to have 24-hour security around there. The actors would have to have their faces covered. This is what would have to go on, and this really shouldn't be happening in the Western world. If they want to have that in the backward countries in which they are, and I say that with respect to some people, are obviously not that way, but the mentality of a population, some subset of the population, if not more than that, then that's fine in their countries until they get to the point where they don't. But for us
are you doing a Donald Trump and referring to them as shitholes?
No.
I'm joking.
I think certainly from
I'm
a
pulling a leg.
no, I know you are, but I do think from a psychological point of view, there has been some, the psychological development has been stunted in a sense,
100%.
and so and again, that's something to call out. We have a difference in society. It's not that we're all equal. We have a better society, in my view, than some of these other ones, and we shouldn't be dropping our standard to theirs. They need to raise theirs, or stay where they are and carry on. That's fine, but to try and restrict us from doing so, no. But that is the challenge, isn't it? It's like, who speaks out? So you have some brave people doing it and more of us doing it, but I do understand that people like yourself, there is legitimate concerns, and anybody, I would say the same thing. Put your safety first. Don't go and if you want to be a martyr, that's great, but I would suggest, and somebody said it to me on a message or sent me some emails as well, saying, hey, I'm going to do this, I'm going to be a martyr. I said, hang on a second, take your no, he wanted to be a hero, and I said to him, I can't stop you doing that, but I would seriously say, really consider the point. Okay, you can be a martyr, maybe you'll go down if that's really what you want, but you probably have more to deliver and more to share alive than not. And so, that would be the view. But at some point, let's not cower away from this. Because of course he's also seen as this perfect human being, and that's not true. Now, if they just said Muhammad came in the 7th century, did what he did, and that's not applicable today, we wouldn't be having 90% of these conversations. We go, okay, he did what he did. But to say that everything he did and he's a perfect example for today, no, we're not going to live under that delusion. And that's my view anyway. I don't know about others.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And also, like, for example, it's like you get different, like you get like a Jerry Seinfeld who's very down the middle of the road, who's not going to swear, who's not going to talk about sex, who's not going to be, crude with his comedy. But then you got someone like a Dave Chappelle or like a whatever. You get different brands of comedy and different. So, for example, me, I'm doing a very sort of PG version. Someone like a side 10 atheist was doing like a plus 18 sort of satire caricature of Islam or of religion. Now, I've watched his stuff. I'm a big fan. I 100% support him. But I know that is not going to be accepted or even entertained by 99%. Or I say 99%. I don't actually know. But the vast majority of Muslims, they won't even get that far with his material. With me, I'm just trying. Like I almost feel like sort of stupid or arrogant. Like, oh, I'm trying to teach them, or I'm trying to, like, for example, when you go for swimming lessons, you don't just chuck someone in the deep end. You sort of, you put the floats on, you put them in the shallow end, let them walk around a bit, let them get used to the temperature of the water. That's what I feel like you were saying, as a civilization, that's where they're at. As much as I would love to be outright or this is what it is and just say something as it is, you kind of have to just sort of ease them into it. That's how I feel. But I 100% agree with you and say that.
Yeah, I can never fault your personal view on it. I could, as I say, speak to the general view of it, which I think I have.
Generally, we should defend our free speech and not pander to these people.
But still, put your personal safety first. Put your personal safety first is the caveat I would have there for people, especially like you.
Yeah, and also, I'm not that kind of forget religion. I'm not that kind of person right now in my life where I would be comfortable. Like, for example, I don't swear in my videos because I know my parents wouldn't be happy. That's not a religious reason. It's not a security. It's just that I still live in the house. I've still got to show my face. I'm not going to be overly sexual or crude and like those kind of jokes.
Do your parents watch the movie, the videos at all?
They did. They watched every single video in the beginning, and just up until now. But I think they've kind of stopped watching it because I think they realize, or they kind of, again, without giving too much away, not for security reasons, but I don't know how they would feel if I said it, but they sort of realize, okay, in the beginning they thought, oh, it's just like a hobby. It's just like a thing he does, and he will stop doing it. He'll get bored. But obviously, I'm not doing it for a hobby or for something that's just, I play football on the weekend. I genuinely believe in free speech. I genuinely believe in satire. So when they realize I really, ideologically, I do believe in this as a vehicle, as a means of challenging extremism and calling out nonsense where it's nonsense, And the mom was like, "Can you just do some videos on something else, like I don't know, like Donald Trump or something else, like a comedy thing, something else that's not related to religion?" Like she's like, "Okay, fine, you've done enough, Zakir Naik. You've done enough, whatever. Just do something else now." And I don't think she got it. It's like in the beginning, she was like, "No, it's not just about doing Zakir Naik. He's not the point. The point is, I'm challenging certain beliefs. I'm challenging extremism. I'm challenging this idea that you can't talk about certain subjects or certain religions." And obviously, I'm using Zakir Naik as an example. But when they got that, I think they became a bit less interested in my videos because they realized it's not just something he does when he's bored. It actually means much more than simply dressing up as Zakir Naik or whoever and taking the mic. Does it make sense?
Yeah, definitely. So let me ask you a question. Perhaps you can speak to this. Why is it, because this is beyond my understanding, and obviously not being a Muslim, it just like boggles my mind. So maybe you can speak to it, certainly from when you were a Muslim or just your thoughts in general. But why is it that Muslims, in some Muslims, and again, you can tell me whether it's the case for you or your family or anybody else that you know, put Muhammad on such a pedestal? I mean, he died 1400 years. Nobody even knew him. They barely knew what he said. I mean, if you believe what is said in the Quran and Hadiths, even that is probably a very small percentage of what he actually supposedly said. But why is it that some Muslims will take him to be, they feel more highly about him or love him more, or whatever term you want to use, than their own family, the people that brought them up, that brought them into this world, that cared for them and loved them? Speak to that mentality, because that is just alien to me.
To be completely honest with you, I heard this a lot, but even when I was hearing it as a kid, when people used to say in the mosque or imams, you're meant to love the Prophet more than you love your own parents or you love your own family, whatever. And I this is when I was even young, so quote unquote more innocent and more susceptible and prone to these religious beliefs. I asked myself, do I love the Prophet more than I love my own parents? The answer was no. Like, it was so strange that I actually wanted to love him more. I remember thinking about it, I really want to, but I don't know the guy. So how do I love someone who I don't even? I've got a grandfather on my mom's side who died before I was born. He died when my mom was 14. Do I love that grandfather? If I'm honest, I don't know if I can, because I never knew the guy. If I can't even love my grandfather on my mom's side, who I never met, how can I love a guy who's 1400 years ago, not even from my quote unquote tribe? I haven't even seen a picture of it. At least I saw a picture of my grandfather. I was like, I can't do it. I really can't do it. So I don't know how many people, Muslims, genuinely love the Prophet more than their family. I would doubt, again, I can't prove this, that most of them do. But I think they use it as a virtue signaling tool or a test of, look how religious I am. I love the Prophet more than my own family. It's almost like a virtue. Oh, look how bad, look how sort of amazing I am. Look how religious and fervent in my belief. I love my Prophet more than my family. I'm willing to die for the Prophet. It just becomes like a sort of show off kind of thing, isn't it? Again, if you were to genuinely ask these people, I don't know what the answer would be, but I highly doubt if we're gonna respect the word love and not just twist it as in, oh, I love that girl, but I met her once. If we're going to really respect the word love, I don't think they would genuinely love the Prophet more in their hearts than their own parents. But I think it's a virtue signaling tool and a test of your religiosity or fake religiosity by saying, I love the Prophet more than my parents. Wow, this guy's amazing. That's what I think.
Yeah, I think you could be right about that. That is probably part of it. I've met people in Speaker's Corner who genuinely say they love the Prophet more than their own family, and you hear it from jihadis as well, don't you? So my family said this, but well, they actually say Allah comes first, but again, you hear it from the very radical people as well as not quite as radical people in Speaker's Corner telling me the Prophet is more important. They compare it to swearing or cursing at your mother. So when people swear or ridicule Muhammad, for them it's like swearing or cursing at your mother. And even that, I'm going like, that's not such a big deal. Somebody said bad things about my mom, I go, you're factually incorrect. But then again, so I do also understand that I've had some psychological training. So I could have if you'd said that to me when I was 18, I might have got pissed off and wanted to have a fight. But I've learned something since then. But it takes some work to do that, to kind of go, okay, you're factually incorrect. It's just words. It's an unsubstantiated claim, as one would say. and I don't have an emotional impact. And I think taking the emotion out of it immediately goes, okay, so now let's have this on an intellectual discussion. You've made these claims, and now give me the evidence for that. But most people react at an emotional level, which is a lower level.
Yeah.
You know, it's more like, it's almost like an evolutionary, much lower level to react in. And that's what I notice.
Can I, you made a very good point there. Can I tell you a funny story, but just after this point? You know, when you, for example, if you were to ask a Muslim, do you, like, let's say we're in a room, right? Let's say I'm in a room with like 3 or 4 Muslims, whatever. And I ask the first Muslim, do you love the Prophet more than your family? And he or she says yes. Now, once I ask the first, now how can the second Muslim I ask the same question to say no, I don't? Because now the first, you sort of see that, because now he can't say no, because then he seems like, oh, either less religious, or he respects or she respects the Prophet less than the first guy. If that makes sense. Now that it's like a ratchet effect. Once someone says, well, you have to love the Prophet more, you can't say no, because then you're sort of attacking the centerpiece of your religion and your existence, the most perfect human being on the earth. We know about him, and you're going to say you don't love him more than your parents. So that even if Muslims don't love him, or you can't say it. I remember, this is the funny story. This is going to sound so weird. Me and my wife, when we were Muslims, we had this, we did this thing, this Muslim speed dating thing, where you would get Muslims in a room. Most of the time, they're socially awkward, can't find a spouse for themselves. I'm being really deep. It's not. It doesn't just happen with Muslims. It happens with everyone. But you know, and Muslims have their own problems when it comes to finding spouses, because it's haram to talk to girls and boys. Anyway, so me and my wife did this. We only did it once because we kind of got bored of it. And the second reason is because Muslims are so hard to handle and unreliable. But anyway, we did this speed dating thing, and we like, you know, it was actually a pretty good event. We had these questions we would ask people, so to like break the ice. So we have like I had one group, five men, 5 women, something like that, 6 each. And I asked them, you know, what do you think about gender roles? What do you think about, you know, where do you want to be in 5 years' time? If you can meet one person, who would that person be? And the point of these questions was just to sort of give other people an indication of their personality and their dreams and aspirations. So then it came around to the question of, if you could meet one person, who would you meet? Now, the first person said, I would meet the Prophet Muhammad. Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam. Okay, great. Now, the other people after that person, if they were to say Bill Gates or, I don't know, some other person, how bad would they look that the first person has said, I would meet the Prophet if I had a chance? And the second guy's going to say, oh, I would meet, I don't know, Dave Beckham. He would automatically look worse than the first guy, if that makes sense. So it becomes this virtue signaling tool to say, well, I love the Prophet more. So now you, by default, although yes, you physically can say, I don't love him, but in society and societal norms, you can't say that, if that makes sense. Am I making sense?
According to Islam and to Muslims, absolutely.
Yeah. So in that circle, when the first guy said, I would meet the Prophet, the second person said, yeah, I would meet the Prophet as well. And then I said, okay, guys, let's talk about living people. Which living person would you want to meet? And then this is after the death of Osama bin Laden, or whatever you want to call it. Someone said, I'll meet Osama bin Laden. I was like, firstly, he's dead. And he goes, no, he's not. I was like, what? So what? Is he alive with Tupac? He goes, yeah. I was like, bro, for God's sake, don't go there. This is about you trying to find a chick. It's not about you and your conspiracy theories. Just let's just keep it mainstream. But anyway, once he said that, all the girls went completely off him, and he was actually the best looking guy in the room, amazing good looking guy in the room. But once he said that, he got found out, which was precisely the point of the question, was to show your personality. He's obviously, anyway, a conspiracy theorist. But that's what I find. You can't. It's the unbelievable amount of virtue signaling that I found in Islam. It's just nauseating, and this is one example of it. Oh,
but is there anything that would convince you to go back to Islam?
No, not as a practicing Muslim, but I am willing to engage with Islam, as I'm willing to engage with anything that I find interesting, as an idea, as a part of history. I'm more than happy to engage with it. I'm more than happy to, I'm even going to go as far as to say I'm more than happy to learn from it if there's something to learn from. There's nothing wrong with learning from people, or even people even learn from Hitler, not the bad stuff, but learn about him so they can maybe take precautionary measures or whatever. So I don't have any problem in learning about it or even talking about it, engaging with it. But for me, it's completely dead. What have I got to gain? And this is going to sound like a free market cap, but what have I got to gain from by being a Muslim? If I don't believe in God, if I don't believe in heaven and hell, I don't like praying. So what do I have to gain, materially or otherwise, spiritually? Personally speaking, I would have nothing to gain other than finding it interesting to talk about and engage with. Is that all right? Or,
no, that's good. Good.
But yeah, that was an interesting part of my life where I was doing speed dating for Muslims. Well, I actually met one of the Al-Muhajirun guys. This was during Ramadan time. Please let me know if we've overran. I'll make this my last.
We'll probably wrap it up by 11, so we'll go for a little
more. There's always more questions popping up. It's just that there's so many and you don't want to interrupt and blah blah blah. So yeah,
please step in. I feel like if you need to say something, just say it. Don't worry about me. Just jump in whenever you want. But I met one of these guys. I was giving out. This was Ramadan time in the summer a few years ago when it was nice. It was summertime Ramadan. So at night time when people coming out of Regent's Park Mosque, and I was handing out leaflets for my marriage event saying, come this place this time, you can meet brothers or sisters and da 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 da. This is how much it cost. I think it cost like a $5. Anyway, so I was giving out leaflets, and obviously I'm giving out marriage event leaflets or speed dating leaflets. Other guys are giving out dawah leaflets. Okay, great. One of these Muhajirun guys come and he goes, bro, can I see your leaflet, please? And I said, yeah, sure, take it. And then he looks at it. And then he comes back to me after a while and goes, bruv, what is this? I'm like, oh, it's just about, speed, like people could meet each other for marriage and this and that. And, I think it was called a marriage event. He goes, bruv, are you sure this is halal? I was like, well, yeah, I mean, it's a public space. We're not, there's no closed rooms. All the people, all the conversations that are happening with people is out in the open. He goes, yeah, but bruv, you can't do that, right? I'm like, well, me and you are talking here. There's women around us who are talking. Why is that halal and why is it haram for me to do a marriage? Oh, but the commandment changes when it's in a room. I'm like, bro, what are you on about? Bro, we're in a public space. Anyone come in, anyone can go out. I mean, he kept going back and forth. I said to him, bro, listen, if you don't want to come, just don't come, right? It's not a big deal, right? It's fine. I didn't know he was Muhajirun at the time. 2 seconds later, Anjum Chowdhury comes and says, Assalamu alaikum to him. And he starts, chatting to him, like, bro, this is. I'm like, no wonder you're such a bloody Wahhabi. Your voice with Anjum Chowdhury. And then when Anjum Chowdhury came, he said salam to everyone, and I automatically, without thinking, involuntarily said wassalamu alaikum, and then I realized who it was. But I was like, what a bastard! And then this woman standing next to me saying, "Oh, don't say that." I'm like, "What do you mean don't say that?" He said, "He's a bastard. He makes us look so bad." He said, "Oh yeah, but you can't really say that kind of stuff about Muslims." I'm like, "Shut up, man, suck out." But anyway, that was that. That was back.
But I actually think that they should be able to speak as long as they don't advocate violence, because they're the best anti-dawah people in the world. So they undo all the dawah that their so-called Muslim moderate brothers are doing. The same with a couple of the people in Speaker's Corner. Let these extreme radicals speak. People hear that, they go, that's what Islam means. Unfortunately, innocent people like your family potentially get caught up and they get all put together. But those of us who are a bit more careful go, okay, we know that there are good Muslims out there. Yeah, but absolutely. In terms of my view is, like, if everybody could leave Islam, that would be a good thing for the world. And so these guys are just doing the anti-dawah. No problem. So they are working against their so-called moderate Muslim guys that come down to do Gadawa in Speaker's Corner and so forth. So let them speak. People look at that and go, you guys are from a backward 7th century time. We don't want anything to do with it. So, in a sense, that would be at least a good stepping stone, is not to have anybody else convert. But I noticed that obviously the converts down to Speaker's Corner, every now and again, they do a shahada that they show on camera. I would love to speak to one of those guys and find out what the reasons was for them becoming Muslim. And you would find that there's a complete lack of critical thinking. It probably is things like, because I've heard it from some of the other converts there, hey, I was a drug addict, Islam got me out of that, I was a gangster, whatever. And I've never shied away from saying that there's a utility value to religion in the sense of like it can help people, but that doesn't mean it's true.
Yeah.
You know, they could have gone to the AA, or they could have gone to some kind of anti-gang get together, and that would have done the same thing. The fact that they chose this, so whatever reasons they give me would not be, you know, intellectually sound reasons. They would most probably be emotional or not well thought through at all.
100% agree. And speaking on emotional, a lot of Muslims say, oh, ex-Muslims or people who leave Islam, they're left for emotional reasons. Oh my God, there's no rational reason why you would leave Islam, all this kind of nonsense. But when you listen to the stories of Muslims, or people who became Muslim, some of the stories are so, especially use of Islam. Oh, I was in a thing getting drowned. I prayed to God. God help me. I'm like, oh, that is so anecdotal and so emotional, and they love it.
How does he know which God? Is that the originally Cat Stevens? Was that Cat Stevens?
Yeah, Cat Stevens. Yeah. And by the way, I went to his school from year 9 to year 11.
So here's the thing for me, and you can test this out, Veedu, in future. My claim is that every single theist on planet Earth at some point has not thought critically. In other words, at some point, if they thought about it at all, or in any way taken time to contemplate, the rest, you know, we don't even attach, they haven't thought about it. So those Muslims who have culturally been brought up, they've just been culturally brought up. But any theist, be it a Muslim or a Christian, even the smartest ones in the world, if we had to look back and ask enough questions, we'll find at some point, because they'll come with what they think are sophisticated arguments today, but if you look back at why they were or believed in God, what was the turning point for them that said, yep, this is absolutely true, then they'll find subsequent reasons to try and enforce that. But if we look back, my claim is we can find a point where they were not thinking critically. Every theist in the world, there's not a single one that I believe has thought critically about this enough. From the very beginning all the way through. Now they can, as I say, come with pretty fancy arguments today, which at least are not completely refutable. They've got, you know, rebuttals against them, but they're not completely refutable. But at some point, if they've thought about it at all and made an quote unquote intellectual decision, at some point they would have made a jump that they would not have done had they been thinking critically. That's the claim. And I'd love you to test that. Ask Muslims, you know, what's your story, and find out, because you'll be able to identify it yourself. And you go, hang on a moment, you shouldn't have made the jump then. I mean, if I use an example, Darren Hamza, Redbeard Hamza in Speaker's Corner, he's been on camera saying it multiple times that he did intellectual investigation and came to the conclusion that Islam was true. Unfortunately for him, there was a video of him being interviewed, and he says it himself, so I'm not making it up. It's out there on the internet. Somebody pointed it to me, in fact, where he says, hey, the thing that turned me, the thing that pushed me over the edge, I was kind of like, okay, there is a God and I'm thinking about it, blah, blah, blah. But the thing that turned me over the edge was the hell. If there's a hell and I'm going there, no. So that for him, unfortunately, obviously, is a contradiction to his intellect.
That is such a weasel.
That's like an emotional thing. Hey, there's a fear-based thing. It's an emotional-based thing. Hey, if I'm going to hell, no, I don't want to go to hell. Therefore, I'm going to believe. And subsequently, then they go and learn all the arguments and sound like they can defend, you know, the faith. But there's an example. So I would wager that you could do that with every Muslim, or Christian for that matter. You would find a point where they started to think about it, made the decision that this was true. At that point, you could find something where they made that, where the critical thinking has just not been in operation. Otherwise, my claim is that they would not be a theist. But test it out yourself. See if you can come across somebody and send them to me. I'd love to have that conversation.
I think you're onto something. I really do agree with that, especially when these beliefs are taught to us when we're at such a young age and we don't really have an understanding of the world and or whatever. We just operate in our own small minds. And it is in that age where we are so malleable. And when things happen to you and maybe you look for an explanation, or we were taught something at school, whether it's out of fear or out of love or the promise of heaven or the fear of hell, so many things could be part of that sort of, so many ingredients part of that sort of cocktail which makes you believe in God. And that is the irrational jump, the irrational leap of faith, which is why it's very hard to get out of that, because we might be talking about intellectual or theological issues, because that's what we can deal with. But maybe the approach isn't to do that. Maybe it's to say, well, why do you believe? What about believing God makes you happy? Or what about it makes you sad? Maybe that is the approach, because it's like we're playing chess, but they're playing checkers. And we're never going to beat them at checkers because we're playing by different rules. So if we come up with the most robust intellectual argument, they'll still wriggle out of it find some sort of way with wordplay or, I don't know, acrobatics. But the real way to get to their brain, maybe through the heart. Who knows?
Yes, I think that could definitely be an approach. I guess and again, having, had some experience in sales and marketing as well, it's who's your target audience. And mine are not those people that need to be convinced to get out of it in that sense, in the sense that you mean, which is like they want to hold on to it. And now you have to give them overwhelming reasons not to. Ideally, my perfect customer, if you want to call it that, the perfect person that I'd want to appeal to is the person that's going, hey, I'm looking into this intellectually, honestly. I am a Muslim. I'm not sure that it's true. I want to go out there and I want to find out. And I am open to being convinced that it's not true. So that the level, the bar doesn't need to be pushed as hard. They're already open to it. Yeah. Now, obviously, they can go backwards and forwards to whatever degree. I understand that. And there's somebody in the chat at the moment who's gone backwards and forwards to some degree as well. But those are the sort of people, because the people that are staunchly, and you've got to fight, it's like pulling a bar away. They must be putting their hand out and going, hey, share with me something. But if they got if they got clenched fists against their body, that's a much harder person. That isn't my ideal people. There might be, and you might be able to, and other people might be able to get to one or two of those people, but that wouldn't be the ideal person that I would want to interact or hope would, do it. It's the people who are already thinking, and there's, by all accounts, many of them out there, probably in the hundreds of thousands, if not millions, that are thinking about these sort of things and going, hey, I've just been spoon-fed this stuff. I want to look into this myself, and I'm open to being changed, like you were potentially at some point. Obviously, you might not have been early on, as you mentioned, but at some point you suddenly started to think of that. That's the kind of person that, like you at your thinking point, is the sort of person that I ideally would want to, have interactions with. So it depends on who you want to change.
I 100% agree. Like you were saying, who's your audience and what? You know what? The problem comes down to language, man. When we, like, again, this is I suppose a bigger discussion. It all comes down to language. Language can be so effective and yet so ineffective. We could be trying to prove, like, this is where I was talking with Hassan Radwan on my channel stream, where if I'm saying something against Islam, or apparently quote unquote against Islam, whatever, yes, rightly or wrongly, whatever, Muslims say, oh, he's attacking me. But you are not your idea. You are separate from your idea. Your
Correct.
Ideas come and they go. You can change, you can manipulate, you can have no ideas, you can have many ideas, but you still remain you. Okay? So it comes down to language. How are we going to speak to, if someone identifies their religion as them, as if it's the same thing, as if it's glued together, then any criticism you make of Islam will be a personal attack. You can be the most polite, you can be the most intellectually coherent or whatever it is, well constructed. It will never get across to them because to them it's a big FU. It's like, oh, but what, did the Prophet really do that? How dare you say that to me? So maybe, again, I'm not saying I have the answer, because I definitely don't. How do we speak to someone like that? Or maybe not yourself, because you're saying that you wouldn't want to engage because it's...
I'm not sure you can. I think so. It could be that you may not be able to speak to somebody. I mean, in my world, those people need a psychological upgrade. But if they're not aware that they need that, or they're not open to it, then you haven't got a hope. So it could be that you just can't reach certain people. It's so ingrained them that nothing can change their mind. And so if they've got an unfalsifiable belief, nothing will change their mind. They're, in a sense, they're irrational, and that's not the sort of person that you can hope to have any kind of rational and reasonable dialogue with, or hope to convince. And so I think there is a subset, at least, of people like that, especially in Islam, that are never going to be convinced for any reason. And I don't mind talking to them, because I'm not there to convince them. Same with the people in Speaker's Corner. I've had Ali Dawa and this lot say, hey, Rob, after speaking to you, I'm more Muslim, which is ironic, obviously. Really? Yeah. But I'm going, like, I never go to the park or to Speaker's Corner to try and convince somebody to leave Islam. That's never been the case. What I do is go down there to critique it, and I'm hoping that people who are watching, either in the audience live or the people on Speakers, who watch the videos, will get to think about it, go and do their own research. And my claim is, if they think critically and they evaluate evidence, they will come to the conclusion it's not true. So that's my point. But it is ironic that the people that you speak to go, do you know what? Having spoken to you, I'm now more convinced. And I'm going, like, okay, I may not be able to articulate it as well as perhaps Stops or other people, but I think I can communicate reasonably well in English. And if you finish having a conversation with me, and it's not just me, by the way, I've got a friend, again, one of the very smart on cosmology. You know, he's the Don when he goes down to speakers. Now, he's very humble. He won't say that, but compared to everybody else, you know, like he knows his stuff on cosmology. He goes down there. And the comments in the YouTube channel in his conversation, I mean, he's really given them an education. I don't like the word schooling personally because I think it's kind of more combative. I prefer, hey, you're getting an education, and what we're there to do is to find out what is true and not true. So this whole beating or schooled or whatever the case doesn't work with me. Other people like that, and that's fine. But he gave them an education. And every time he goes there, gives them an education on cosmology or whatever the topic is normally, because that's his specialty. The responses to the videos, hey, his name's Phil. Phil doesn't know. That was the response after listening to this. And I'm like, okay, if the best you can get is, hey, he doesn't know, that's the conclusion that you got from that discussion, then
God
seriously,
help you. God help you.
Yeah. If there was such a thing, or nature help
I wish
you more
there was.
likely.
I wish there was a God so he could help them. I said,
Yeah, yes. Or ideally just get some help, some psychological help here, that if that's the best. So it's like they've got a filter on that. They're looking for this is what I've noticed. They're looking for the keywords. I don't know. We're not 100% sure, or words to that effect. As soon as they hear that, that's all I need. It's like a little hook to hang on, because I haven't got a response to that. I don't really know what you're talking about. But you know much more than me. But hang on a moment. You've said the word I don't know. You said we're not 100% sure. And well, there's my hook. I'm going to hold on to that. I don't care what else you said. I'm almost going deaf on that, and that's what I'm going to stay with. And so you know, those sort of people, what can you do?
So dishonest, because the whole point of the conversation is that you tell the truth to the best of your ability. If you don't know, that doesn't mean you're wrong. That doesn't mean you can't know in the future. It just simply means you don't know. And I would appreciate someone telling me I don't know, as opposed to coming up with some elaborate apologetic about, oh, if you read the verse upside down, then it means this, and that could be translated into this and that. And bro, if you don't know, just say you don't know. I've got much more respect.
The irony is that religion requires this level of certainty. But even if you look at the definition of knowledge and you look into that, knowledge doesn't even have the word certainty. So again, what they want is to have a level of certainty that they are completely unjustified in even attempting to have. And even the philosophical side, they know this. So one or two of the ones that have looked into this know that this is not the case, but they try and dodge around it. But this is what they want, certainty. And of course, the irony is they have no certainty at all. And when you come without certainty, but good reasons, and you are humble enough to say, hey, we as a human species, or the smartest humans on the planet, don't yet have, a conclusive answer. That's all they need to go, do you know what? That means my faith has still got a chance. No, they're not using those words, but essentially that's the thing. I've still got a chance, or it's probably still true. Because you guys don't know, it's probably still true. But even if we did know, and we could say, hey, it's here's the scientific evidence for what happened at the origin of the universe, they would still find some way to not do that. Some of them would maybe start to shift, but as long as we have these gaps in our knowledge, they use the God of the gaps. And as soon as you say that, of course, oh, no, we're not. They hate that words, but that's what they use all the time. I mean, Ali Dawah is just a star pupil of this. He'll come with the simplistic arguments. You ask him a few questions. It's like, you can see the gears trying to work. He doesn't really even understand what you're doing. And it's not a difficult question. I'm not like asking him a deep philosophical question. He comes with complexity. This is the sort of thing. If you haven't watched it, you watch it and maybe it's a bit of comedy to you. It is to me a little bit now. Comes, hey, which is more complex, my shoe or this phone? Some people, and what they're appealing to, of course, is intuition. Most people's intuition is, oh, well, the phone must be more complex because it's got chips in there, and in your shoe is just a shoe. And so all I asked him, okay, well, give me a criteria to judge complexity. Because all I did to him, I took a water bottle and I took it was a tissue, and I said to him, which is more complex? Because he's taking the extreme to try and show an argument. So and now I ask him, and now he's like, doesn't know what to say. I said, just give me a criteria that we can judge what's more complex. Now that, to me, that's not a difficult question to ask. This is beyond him. So this is the sort of thing we get, these very simple, not everybody's like that. Some of them try to, articulate the arguments, but they're all borrowing it from the Christians. They don't really understand the arguments. They've got substantial rebuttals to them. So, not that they've been refuted necessarily. That's not always so easy, but they've got substantial rebuttals. But this is what they sort of do. And so what they appeal to is people's intuition and the low-hanging fruit, the people who go, yeah, that sounds right. I'm going to go with that. Instead of people going, hang on a moment, let me go look into that. If it's that simple, there might be a catch, because if it was that simple, everybody would believe it. I said that to him straight. I said to him, if you think your argument is a knockdown argument, how come the smartest people in the world don't believe this? And he's like, oh, well, they should. I'm like, okay. somehow Ali Dawa has got the answer here, where the finest philosophers and smartest people in the world, I try and listen to smart people, don't have it. There must be a catcher. Either they are completely stupid, or perhaps there's a fault in your argument. But it's battle to.
You are doing the Lord's work by reinforcing their. I'm just joking, of course, but it's just unbelievable. Everything is black or white, yes or no. Is this more complex? Or this more complex? It's so formulaic and it's so boring. It's so boring. It's unbelievable.
Yes, they don't want nuance, because they probably don't understand nuance. And I'm not saying I'm an expert. I don't mind. By the way, it doesn't sound like, oh, Rob's all this intellectual. I'm not, and I never claim to be. And I don't have problems with ignorance, because ignorance can be cured with education. What I have a big problem with is dishonesty and disingenuousness. Those for me are no-goes. And so when that happens, and that's happened to me, and I've interacted with a few people like that, that's a big challenge. But ignorance, I don't have a problem. Somebody says, I don't know. Do you know what, Rob, I don't know. Let me go. Perfect. And I've always said that. I don't go down there to win arguments, but I do go down there to have that conversation. And I've said to people, do you know what? I don't mind if you don't have an answer to that. This is not about me trying to laugh and say, oh, you don't have an answer. Go away, think about it, come back, let's have a chat again next time. I want them to go away and think and to research and to find out. Maybe they come back with a better version of the argument and we can go through that one. That's my intention anyway. But everybody's different. But that's what I want them to do. But of course, people like Dawa and some of the other apologists, they just keep rerunning the same thing. And they've been educated by Phil, especially, and sometimes other smart people, and I don't include myself necessarily. They've been educated and they come back and say the same thing. Now I'm going, okay, hang on a moment. Now we've got dishonesty going on here. So there's that sort of thing as well that goes on. And so, it's mostly just a case of, like, you kind of give up with them. You're never going to convince them, but all you can do is hope that other people watching will make a difference. And I think the same for you. With your videos are different. You're not having that one-on-one interaction necessarily, or maybe you'll get there at some point if you want to or not. But it's all in different ways. And I think the more of us that can do this in our different ways, the more people will reach at a certain time, because they've got to be ready for it as well. So it's no good, trying to convince an extremist. You're very unlikely to do that. But, if they're a bit further down the line, then, your way might work, Stops' way might, mine, somebody else, whoever, so.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah, go for it.
A question to all of you guys.
Mm.
Who is the best, most honest, strongest challenger Muslim you've met? Who is good in his arguments or her arguments, and also shows some honesty and some willingness to learn and really exchange ideas, as opposed to table tennis, ping pong?
Oh, I will actually say one person. The person that I found for me was a guy that I call Polite Hamza. There's a few videos on my channel. If you go to Speakers Corner UK and you search up Polite Hamza, I think Polite's in the brackets. He's for me the model person. Now, we could disagree on every single point of virtually everything, almost, in reality, almost, except that we exist probably. But he was intellectually honest in the sense that he portrayed his version. He was humble. He said, Rob, none of us are walking encyclopedias. Let's have this conversation. I noticed you had this. I said, perfect. So his approach was brilliant as well. So for me, that was the most, when I say honest, I'm assuming that he believes what he believes. So he's not trolling, or he's not, making stuff up. That's what he actually believes, and he's articulating his beliefs as honestly as he can. But his whole approach was so different to what I'm used to in Speaker's Corner. So Polite Hamza would be the only guy that I would say has sort of met that level, that I would go, that's the sort of person I could speak to every single day. We could disagree on everything, but we could sit and have that really honest. And afterwards, we could probably sit and have a beer, or, well, we wouldn't have a beer necessarily, but we could sit and have something, a meal or whatever the case is, and go our own way. And I wouldn't feel like it's been a waste of my time. I don't know. I don't know whether Stops has met somebody like that. maybe not.
No.
Oh man, I was hoping for more positive.
I don't know if TJ has.
I can think of a person, but he was, Ahmadi, so they're not considered Muslim. So I guess no.
Oh man, you got the wrong kind of Muslim.
I know. And
just when you think you're to a winner.
Yeah, exactly. No, because there's so many.
But we need to be realistic. I mean, come on. If you're living in a Muslim majority country, you will find people who are not dogmatic. You will find people who are lenient. You will find people who take everything, with a bit of a chill. And They will not go and say, well, you're not allowed this and this is absolute and that is it. In fact, the majority of people that I met in Muslim majority countries are not like that. They are normal people. They, at the end of the day, are, looking out for their families, looking out for themselves, looking out for the well-being of others. They are not that concerned with gods and what to do with this God. So if I'm realistic, I will say that there are very, very few dogmatic Muslims who will go and say, look, I am a Sunni and I am a Wahhabi, I am a blah, 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 and I'm not allowed to do this and everything else is shirk and all that. No, the majority are not like that. I would say that maybe 15% are hardcore. The rest are just normal people who just want to have a life, who just want to, just enjoy themselves, and that is it. It's just that they were born into the system that they are very, tied into, that they can't get out because they are being reminded every single day. But at the end of the day, they are normal people. And that is what I find is the most amazing thing, that this religion, this ideology is able to suppress the normal human being and all those people, even though if you give them a little wriggle room. This is why Islam is dying at an incredible pace. But at the end of the day, these are normal people.
Yeah, but even that 15% is a lot of people. Stop.
Absolutely. This is why I consider Islam to be dangerous. Absolutely. I'm not going away from that. But we're talking now about the majority. We're talking about normal people. Those are not normal people that are dangerous.
And that's the thing, but, all it takes is to read that book, one time and just take it, literally and apply it to your surroundings. And I think that's the biggest trouble that we have to deal with, is that at any given moment, anybody can take that book literally and want to impose it upon the world. I think that a lot of people, especially on the left, who, deny there's any sort of ideological, component in the world today, I think is just, absolutely deluding themselves. I think that's the conundrum that we face today.
That's exactly right. Yeah. And this is where we need to differentiate between the normal people who are just sort of following because they don't know better. They don't have the courage. They are somehow in the system, and this is, how they grow up, and this is what they have every single day of their lives, and they don't know better. But they are not the extremists. Those are not the ones that will blow themselves up. But it's very difficult to differentiate between the ones who are just taking everything with a pinch of salt and those who are going to be violent and who are going to be aggressive and who are going to, how they call it, radicalize themselves, or who are going to be radicalized. That's the problem with this.
Yeah, you're right, and I think we've also got to face the fact that in 2018, Islam seems to be the sole religion that does these sort of things. The majority, you're quite right, will never happen. So it's just a minority, but we're not seeing this in other ideologies. So what is it about Islam that allows this to happen with, consistent regularity?
I think it's twofold. I think that ultimately, Islam, it, I guess you could say, animates itself, or it's such a powerful thing because it's not just a theology, it's also political. It animates every aspect of their life, whether it be the politics, their economics, their salvation, their psychology, everything. There's not a single thing that Islam does not cover.
Yeah, but TJ, you must have heard this thing that Islam was invented to cover 10 or 20 years, just to conquer things. This was just to get people in line, to stop them going and chasing after women, and rather going and concentrating on fighting. This is what it was intended for. Nobody knew that it was going to be so hugely successful.
I mean, that's true too. I mean, at the point where, Islam.
Is it just?
No, I was saying, if you look at Islam too, I guess it was kind of kind of by circumstance that, like, the Byzantines and the Persians were weak at that time, and Islam was able to fill that vacuum. So, by the luck of the draw, I guess you could say, is why it also was able to expand so far. I mean, all the way from Spain to India, and also went into Europe too. So, but now you can see it on the, it's been on the decline for quite some time, but now we're seeing this this sort of Islamic, what's the term I want to use? I guess a revival, where there's periods where, like, it's kind of a pendulum where it's going to swing back one way, but then it's going to swing back the other way. And we're seeing it swinging back towards the other, the other side. So it's going to be interesting to see how this all plays out. But, we're going to have, we'll be dealing with this for quite some time. And, human beings, just to break it down simply, human beings are fundamentally, irrational beings. So we're always going to see religion play some sort of role at any given time. And I think that, we can't expect, human beings to, throw off their nature. So I think that's also important to recognize.
I expect this very much.
Yeah. No matter how much reason we, we use, ultimately it's going to be subject to our passion, our desires, So,
DJ, you're cutting in and out.
TJ, you do need to get a better connection or some other way, because every time you're on, you're in and out. We can hear most of the time, but you cut in and out. I think it's your connection or something there, because we're just not getting a clear, signal from you.
It sounds like your microphone jack is somehow bent or something.
Yeah, I've been trying to fix this problem for a while now, and I can't figure it out.
I don't want to leave Veedu sitting there quietly. He's the guest on the show. I know he's spoken a lot. Is there anything else you want to share with us, Veedu? Obviously, I've put your channel out. I'll put that again. Let me grab that from you so that people can see you. Let me just find that.
No, guys, please don't feel like I'm genuinely enjoying this exchange of ideas, and don't worry if I'm not speaking. I'm just giving my vocal cords a bit of a rest. I've been going on and on and on and on. I almost feel really bad, going on so much. I hope I haven't bored you guys or anything.
No, that's the point of having a guest. We want the guest to do most of the speaking, which hopefully you have done, and so it's been fascinating.
We don't want to stress our vocal cords so much. That's why we invite people.
Okay.
This is the chance for you to share your views. So no, it's been brilliant. If there's anything else, anybody else on the panel? Otherwise, I guess we'll be looking to wrap it up. We've been going sort of 3 hours and 15 minutes odd now, which is good. We do 4-hour plus shows, but not that often. So obviously, you've been a great guest for us to keep going as long as we have. But anything else, guys? Go for it.
Yeah, any other quick questions or related to religion, not religion, or whatever? Just want to get it out there, or any questions from the comments? Anyone wants to say something or whatever it is, more than welcome to. So yeah,
yeah, definitely. This is the last moment. So if you've got a question for Veedu.
No, I just want to say thank you. It's been highly entertaining. It's been, a great insight into how people think and how people get out of Islam and all the different steps. And I really enjoyed how you are able to vocalize it. You're able to, to actually go and describe what you did, how it felt like. You were very open in answering everything. I thought you were great, and I want to thank you really a lot for doing what you did tonight. Thank you very, very much.
Genuinely, I am humbled. Because these kind of conversations that need to happen. I really think people are thirsting for these open conversations where people just say what is on their mind, and we're respectful, and we are trying to get to the proverbial truth, whatever that is. But we're all getting there 1 centimeter at a time, maybe one step forward, 1 step back, whatever. But at least we're trying to get there. And for you guys to give me this platform where I can answer your questions and ask you questions, it really is an honor. I don't take it lightly. And for us, we've been going 3 hours plus. I thought I was run out of things to say within the first 20 minutes. I thought after Zach and Nike impression is downhill. But seriously, man, I've really, really enjoyed it. And some of the stuff you've said has really resonated with me and made me think. I mean, you were talking about Prophet Muhammad not being not even being Muhammad, being an amalgamation. You also talking about, although we should, I'm speaking to my audience, we should not in no way give away any territory, and we should stand by our freedom of speech. It offends or not offends, irrelevant. They do not get to decide what we can say or what we can't say, when they especially do not have a vested interest in the preservation of the society. See what I'm saying? It's all about, if you have roots here, if you have a genuine interest in the progression of the society, great. Even if I disagree with you, great. If you've openly said you want caliphate, you openly said you don't agree with this Garfield law, then I'm sorry, mate. You can F off as far as I'm concerned. Not physically, but intellectually. I don't care anymore, because now you've signaled to me you've no interest in preserving the society and the freedoms that we have. So whether you're offended or not is not. I don't care. Don't really care. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
but
and
yeah, man.
we've talked a lot about sort of freedom of speech and the whole offense thing. And obviously I've done some psychological training, and being offended is actually a subjective choice. And when you unpack it, and perhaps one day I would do the whole thing, but it's quite a long thing and it probably bore people. I'm not sure maybe it's useful, maybe not. But if people got to the view, which I think is undeniable, that being offended is a choice. You are choosing to feel offended, even though you don't realize it, because you're not sure the psychological processes involved. Now it's a whole different story. And so really the question to ask people is, well, how long are you going to choose to feel offended? And the moment you ask the question like that, the word choice comes in there. Now they would go, well, I'm not feeling it. Well, that's easy in my view to show that you are choosing. You're just not consciously choosing in the moment. It's all happening instantaneously. But if you unpack that and show the process, you can easily show that somebody is choosing. It's now recognizing consciously to undo that, what I would say, low level psychological state. And if that's what we should do. It's a case of, we seem to want to be lowering ourselves. And again, one of my mentors said, don't wish things were easier, wish you were better. And that's always stuck in my mind. So raise ourselves up. Don't just wish everything was so easy. And I think that sometimes we all do that to some degree, but I think sometimes that's the case with people in religion and other things, where they want to feel offended. Hey, make it easy. Don't offend me. No. Make yourself better so that you don't choose to feel offense, would be the way I would sort of structure that.
Exactly. It's like that Bruce Lee saying, I don't know if he said it or not. I'm sure you might have seen the meme or the whatever. Don't pray for an easy life. Pray for the strength to deal with a hard one, if that makes sense. So make yourself stronger and work out, rather than say, oh, I wish everything was easy and comfortable, so I wouldn't have to lift the muscle. And the same is true physically, the same is true intellectually, emotionally as well. I think we've really cucked ourselves, I'm speaking in SJW left talk now, but we really have sold ourselves short by, I suppose this is maybe one of the signs of a civilization that has achieved a lot. We've gone through the hard times, and now we're in a moment, or in a place where we've got luxuries of technology. We can nice warm beds. Now we want things easy, and then we become soft, and then we start caring about feelings. When you're in the coal mines, you don't really have time to care about that kind of stuff. When you're in the trenches, you don't have time to care about that stuff. But now you're not. You maybe a new generation of people come where they want everything nice and cushy and easy, and that means intellectually you're not as robust. It means you're more susceptible to, I'm going to say in the proper, like, diseases, intellectual diseases, as well as, I'm not just talking about Islam, but in general, this ever increasing authoritarianism. But yeah, I mean, I could go on about this, to be honest with you. I don't want to take more of your time. I feel like, what?
No, I think that's brilliant. You made a good point about people who are being bombed in Syria or elsewhere, whose quality of life is much lower. They're not going to sit and have time to think about the intellectual or the emotional or the psychological state of the world or their community or even themselves. It's a survival mode. And so, and if we were in the same position, we would be doing the same thing. But for those of us who are fortunate to, not be under constant attack and have a reasonable level of life, then perhaps it is worth us taking the time to do that. I just want to ask a couple of questions in the chat here, if I can, just to sort of get towards finishing off here. TDS Dave, one of our great guys, he's a wonderful guy. I met him. He's an atheist, very smart guy. He hasn't got a great connection. Otherwise, I'd have him on here as a guest all the time. But he asked, do you, Veedu, think moderate Muslims enable the extremists. You might have heard that sort of phraseology. What's your thoughts on that?
I think yes and no. I think, for example, and this is obviously a tiny example, is when I was talking about earlier, when I was saying, oh, Anjum Chowdhury is a bastard. The moderate Muslim, the woman standing next to me, her initial response was, don't say that. Why? If someone is a bad apple in your community and they are poisoning the well, your response shouldn't be, don't call it out. Don't say that. Your response should be, yeah, he's an idiot. He's making us look bad. Let's call him out for who he is and for what he stands for. So there is that as well. But then there's the other part which I spoke to you about, and this is, I suppose, again, another conversation, that the language of religion is so potent and so powerful. It is used as a tool for virtue signaling, for bludgeoning, for silencing. So even if there are people within the community who say, you know what, I don't really agree with this kind of stuff. Yes, we do have a problem with extremism within the community. The moment they question or the moment they raise their voice, they are silenced, subdued, and marginalized. And the cost of them saying that isn't worth it to them personally. So they're like, you know what, forget it. I'm just trying to get along. I'm doing my 9 to 5. I'm trying to take care of the kids. It's just not worth it. I don't agree with it, but there's nothing I can say. So there is definitely an enabling by certain moderate Muslims. And by the way, this is a relevant thing today. So, do you remember that thing BBC did, that ISIS housewives?
Yes, yeah.
Now, the thing is, this is the thing. Imagine if let's say I'm a satirist. I make a video of saying KKK housewives, and I completely rip the KKK, bunch of rednecks, they're stupid, they're sleeping with a sister. I go all the way and I rip the KKK. If a white guy comes up to me and says, bro, that's so offensive, why are you making fun of the KKK? I'd be like, sorry, do you sympathize with these people? Are you offended because you are one of them, or you have their same, like, why would a normal, reasonable white guy be upset if I'm making fun of the KKK? Unless, of course, he agrees with them. When they've ripped the ISIS housewives, moderate Muslims, normal Muslims were getting upset. My question is, why are you getting upset when these people, their number one target is firstly Muslims? They are ruining your countries, and you're upset because someone's making fun of them. Something is wrong there in the wiring. I'm sorry, but something wrong there in the ideological wiring or the logical wiring. Something is wrong. It's so tribal that even if someone in their tribe is attacked who is a bad person, their default setting, the default reaction is to protect them, even though those people would not protect them, if that makes sense. So we need to confront that. Yeah. I'm sick and tired. I'm really sick and tired. Why are you offended by ISIS? By someone making fun of ISIS? Who on earth are you? Unless you're a sympathizer, you shouldn't be offended.
Yeah.
Sorry, that your questions are so good that it turns into a rant. I'm really sorry. I've got to apologize.
That's not a problem. A couple more quick ones. Just for those who are interested, there's been a request for an after show. So for those who want to come onto the after show, what an after show is, Veedu, if you've still got time, you could stay on. If not, I totally understand. It's been a long time for you. I'll probably be on for a while. So I wish, I mean, you're welcome to get some, absolutely. What we will do is, when we finish here, we'll stop the broadcast, so it won't be recording, it won't go live, but the hangout will continue in a private form. So you may have been in some of these before. I've been in many of them as well. So it essentially looks like this, except that it's not being recorded or broadcast to people. So whatever's said is only said among the group there. So if you want to join an after show with some of the people here, then let me know and I'll send you the link. But you need to be a friend of mine in Facebook. If you don't want to be on the broadcast, then you're more than welcome to do that. A couple more quick questions and then we'll bring it to a close. Who's your favorite soccer team? Or do you have one? Football team?
Unfortunately, Arsenal.
Arsenal, there we go. Okay, I
have to unfortunately, because it's not a great time to be a Muslim or an Arsenal fan. But anyway, go on.
Fair enough. There you go for those who are interested. Last question then. Would Veedu consider doing a podcast together with Hassan Radwan? You guys did a great one together. So maybe that's something you could do on a regular basis, like answer a question and talk about it for half an hour, an hour. You can see though, you can easily talk for an hour. I mean, an hour will go by like in no time. So
absolutely.
That's something. There's a request there.
I'm going to be actually doing podcast kind of live streams on my channel, I'm going to try to do them every week on a Sunday. I'll have different people. So last week was Hassan was one. This week I'm actually going to have my brother because there's no one else, so I thought I'd get him. Next week I've got my friend who is an atheist, former Christian Catholic, and he's into neuroscience. And I had an amazing conversation with him about free will, and he said to me, "There's no free will," to which my mind was blown. And anyway, long conversation. So
I'll be looking forward to that. Here's the other thing: if you're going to do live, because again, people subscribe to the channel. Let me put the channel up again.
Yep. I don't mean to be too self-serving, but if you could please check my channel out. A lot of people, when they first come across,
everybody who's listening, please do go and check it out. Here's the thing as well, Veedu, if you can, with the live streams, if you can set up the live stream broadcast, schedule it ahead of time, and set it public, then it'll show in the feed, and we can know it. Because if you do it last minute, like everybody knows that we do it on a Friday at 8 p.m. Sometimes I actually only make it public, as we did, like literally just before the show. But people who don't know, and you're doing it at different times, set the link up early and it'll show up in people's subscribe feed, so we can make a list in the diary, because I'd be interested in the neuroscience one. But if you do it like last minute and set it up and go public, then people will miss it. If we're not on that day, we're out, we're working, whatever, then people will miss the live stream. So give people time. So set the live stream up and obviously get it ready, scheduled, public as well, so that people have got time to make a note in the diary, if you're not doing it at a regular time. If you do it regularly every week, then obviously people get used to that.
100% agree. I've actually just started doing this last week, so I'm kind of new to the whole live stream stuff. So I'm definitely going to make it every Sunday. That's going to be my aim, and I'll bring on different people. So this week, my brother. Next week, some guy, atheist, the whole free will stuff. After that, I'm bringing on my very close friend who helped me with the videos from the beginning. He's from a Hindu background, and he's got some very interesting views as well. And he's sort of agnostic, not agnostic. Who knows? We'll find out. But if you can check out my channel, please subscribe to my channel and support me any way you can. I really appreciate it. I'm trying my best to further the conversation, to further these goals, and to protect what we have in this country. So yeah.
Brilliant.
Bank account number, credit card number. What do you want?
Just
you take bitcoins.
Yeah, I don't know if they're halal, so I'm gonna have to,
Okay.
I'm yet to find out the permissibility of the bitcoins. The sheikhs haven't got back to me on that one, so we'll have to give that a miss. But if you can, if you can help me, please check out my Patreon. Whatever you can give, that's great. If you can't give, no problem. Just subscribe and share to the channel, and I will be indebted to you.
How much?
Awesome, man.
Thank you very much. Brother, I hope that answers the question.
Brilliant, man. All right, that's brilliant. I think we'll finish off the live broadcast now. Stop.
Ibn Umar reported Allah's messenger as saying, "Do not intend to observe prayer at the time of the rising of the sun, nor at its setting, for it rises between the horns of Satan." Sahih Muslim 4:1807.
There we
And on
go.
that note,
that's it. So thank you so much again to Veedu. I want to thank the panelists. I know answers just come in. We'll carry on with an after show. So I'll send the link out. I'll pop it into the chat actually after this, because then people can sort of, well, actually I won't. I will email it to Dave and other people who want to listen. Well, I'm not sure how you can, to be honest. You'd have to let me know if you want to listen, and then we can make a plan with a link. But a huge thanks to Veedu. We'd love to have you on again. So if you want to become a semi-regular, regular panelist at some point, it's every Friday, 8 p.m. Let me know. Obviously, you've got your life and your job and whatever you're doing, but feel free to let me know. Drop me a thing in Facebook. We're happy to have you on. And we will be back next Friday, 8 p.m. We will decide on the topic, and we will see you then. Thanks to everybody. Good night and take care.
bye guys.